Chapter 91. Li Qingshan curled his lip. He had almost been fooled by her. What freedom! She was clearly just being carefree and hating work. She wanted to live an even more extravagant life. He wanted to ask more about the nine-tailed fox queen and the 10 demon kings, but she had already changed the topic. She returned to how cute she was, which was why the nine-tailed fox queen had chosen her and invited her to the dragon province. She did not allow Li Qingshan to interrupt her. She continued until she was tired of talking. It's getting late. Time to sleep. She took out a huge cat basket from the bell. It was covered in thick velvet. She curled up comfortably in there. Li Qingshan said, "It's still daytime right now." Xian Yu extinguished the pearl with a wave of her hand. "Daytime is for sleeping. We'll set off at night." Li Qingshan looked at her sleeping form. Her long eyelashes overlapped, her fine nose tilted up slightly, and her lips were pressed together. Her curled-up body seemed even more petite and delicate, lacking her usual stubbornness and willfulness. She seemed so delicate that he could not help but feel the urge to protect her from the bottom of his heart. He shook his head violently. Now was not the time to admire a beauty. She was not someone he needed his protection or someone he could pursue. From a certain perspective, she was still an enemy. How could he be bewitched by her? It was best if he raised his guard. Li Qingshan let out a sigh of relief and exchanged glances with little Anne. He found today's experiences to be far too strange. He glanced at the girl in the cat basket before arriving in a corner of the dwelling and meditating. He continued to practice the spirit turtle's method of sea suppression. Little Anne sat down beside him and meditated as well. Xian Yu flipped around in the cat basket a few times. Suddenly, she said, "Big Black, sing me a song." "I don't," Li Qingshan said firmly. "What's the point of having you around?" Xian Yu opened her eyes. "Then let me go." "Forget it, I'll teach you." Li Qingshan rubbed his forehead. Before he could even say anything, Xian Yu began singing to herself. Xian Yu sang to herself, "Little kitty, good kitty, go to sleep." The gentle singing drifted through the cave. It was extremely pleasant, but Li Qingshan curled his lips. It was clearly a lullaby for coaxing a child. He thought the Dark Queen was probably the type of cat lover who raised cats like they were her children, but when it came from her mouth, it was extremely pleasant, with a hint of tenderness. When Little Anne heard this, the blood flames in his eyes surged and his heart surged endlessly. However, there seemed to be a layer of membrane separating them and he couldn't understand where this feeling came from. "I'm done. You can sing now. I don't remember it." "Sing it again," Li Qingshan said in his heart. "I am a dignified 10-foot man. I walk the path of violence. How can I sing this kind of song?" "You can't even remember something so simple?" Li Qingshan said, "I'm a country demon. I'm stupid and stupid, so of course I don't know anything. I can't remember anything." As a result, Xian Yu sang it again patiently, but the result was the same. Li Qingshan still could not remember it. Xian Yu wanted to lose her temper, but she changed her mind and held a pill between her fingers. She smiled. "If you sing, you'll get pills to eat. Little kitty, good kitty, go to sleep." Li Qingshan immediately began to sing at the top of his lungs. Why wouldn't he sing if there were benefits? He was just selling his skills, not his body. The great leader had once said that the working people were the most glorious. However, his voice was deep and husky, like the hum of metal. Coupled with his forceful roar, a lullaby was forcefully given a rock and roll feeling by him. "Stop singing. You're so noisy." Xian Yu tossed the pill into Li Qingshan's mouth. Li Qingshan sniggered and swallowed the pill, continuing to meditate and cultivate. He did not know the name of the pill, but the effects of each pill were as if he had been reborn. The effects were unbelievably strong. To ordinary people, or even cultivators, these pills were probably treasures that were extremely difficult to obtain. Now that he only needed to shout a few times, it was a heaven-sent opportunity. Xian Yu was no longer sleepy from his noise. She asked curiously, "What's with your appearance?" "Let me guess. Your mother is a tiger, and your father is a cow." Li Qingshan did not answer. It sounded like a curse no matter how he heard it. However, when he thought that she was also an animal, He could only bear with it. How about your father is a tiger, and your mother is a cow? Li Qingshan reluctantly answered with a yep. Xianyu said, I knew it. No wonder you can transform despite being so weak. Your parents are diamonds, and not weak ones at that. Right, where did they go? Li Qingshan said calmly, dead. He was thinking of his parents in this life. Xianyu fell silent. I'm sorry. Then she said, me too. Li Qingshan looked over in surprise. Xianyu said, go to sleep. She turned her back to him and said nothing more. Li Qingshan sighed gently. Suddenly, he sang softly, Little kitty, good kitty, go to sleep. Xuanyue's ears twitched, and Little An listened quietly as well. For a moment, there were no other sounds in the cave. 50 kilometers away, an old man with a sword on his back descended from the sky, landing on the Dragon's Gate mountain. He looked at the collapsed buildings and frowned. His grayish-white hair was tied up in a bun, and he had a wisp of beard that was trimmed meticulously. His eyes shone brightly, but they were reserved and did not shine brightly. He actually resembled the soaring dragon swordsman that was worshipped. However, he was no longer a swordsman of the Jianghu in dire straits. Instead, he was the soaring dragon elder of the Sword Collection Palace. He closed his eyes and sensed, and his frown deepened. The Peachwood Prayer sword he had left behind had actually failed to kill the enemy. The Peachwood Prayer sword was a secret technique of the Sword Collection Palace. It required the Peachwood sword to be worshipped day and night, without a single day of rest. Over time, it would accumulate a tremendous amount of willpower and power of belief. Once it was used, its power would be unstoppable. The Soaring Dragon Elder decided to put this matter aside for now. The Dragon's Gate sect was only a connection he had left behind when he wandered the secular world in the past. In the blink of an eye, a century had already passed, so he did not really care about it. He would deal with his business first before finding that person and killing him in a single stroke. Just when he was about to move, his eyes suddenly narrowed. Gazing over sharply, he saw a white figure descend from above. Jiyu Yangying smiled. Soaring Dragon Elder, long time no see. However, she did not smile at all. The Sword Collection Palace had actually sent a Golden Core Elder. It really was rather troublesome. The two concubines of the Green Province, the Dark Queen and the Ming Queen, were like sworn enemies, while the Ming Queen came from the Sword Collection Palace. She would never let the other party have an easy time as long as she had the slightest opportunity. The Soaring Dragon Elder said, so it's famed Constable Jiyu. Why have you come to such a remote place? He was also cautious inside. Among the White Hawk commanders of the Green Province, she was the most difficult to deal with, and she had always been on close terms with that damned woman, the Dark Queen. She just happened to have a powerful background, so he could not fall out with her so easily. Jiyu Yangying said, I've come under the Dark Queen's request for a small matter, but I never expected to run into you, Soaring Dragon Elder. I just happened to want to invite you to a drink. She immediately made up her mind. As long as she could keep this old man busy, she could let the cat escape to the Dragon Province. Over all these years, the cat had already caused her so much trouble. She really did not want to see it again. Chapter 92. I don't have that kind of free time. After you, Commander Jiyu. The Soaring Dragon Elder was about to take off on his sword. With a flash, Jiyu Yangying blocked his path again. Her smile had already vanished. Soaring Dragon Elder, you're already so old, so why must you lay your hands on a cat? After the Dark Queen lost her child, she completely relied on the cat to console herself. Does the Sword Collection Palace really want to wage war against the Umbral Yin sect? Our Sword Collection Palace has always followed the principle of purging demons and protecting the righteous. Diamonds and monsters are all people who have the right to slay them, the Soaring Dragon Elder said firmly. He wanted to kill the cat demon this time and crush the wretched woman's willpower. And, the cat demon should be carrying a large number of pills or even arcane artifacts on her. It was a tremendous sum of wealth, so he refused to let it slip by. Before he set off, he had performed a divination with the Divining Elder. The divination indicated that this trip would definitely be a success, and he would be able to end his grievances along the way. He was basically confident in victory. In the end, the provincial lord would step forward to mediate, and the Umbral Yin sect might not necessarily have the resolve to wage war against the Sword Collection Palace. Why would two human sects start a war over a cat demon? Jiyu Yangying's expression changed. Golden light flashed through her eyes, and she sneered. If the Sword Collection Palace is so impressive, why don't they slay a dragon in the Ink Sea and kill the greatest demon king of the Green Province? All they do is bully the weak and fear the strong. The Soaring Dragon Elder said, "Our palace master has his own plans for this." Before he had even finished speaking, he had merged with his sword and turned into a streak of light, shooting through the air with lightning speed. The golden light in Jiyu Yangying's eyes vanished. After a moment of hesitation, she did not strike in the end. She sighed gently. The swordsmanship of the Sword Collection Palace pursued the extremities of the path of the sword. It did not rely on external objects, and its power was extraordinary. It was far beyond what regular golden core cultivators could contend with. Unless she had no other choice, she did not want to clash with him. Now, all she could do was find the cat before him. She could only hope that her 6 lines divination was a little effective and that Mo Yu could help her out a little. In the boundless mountains, as long as any demon saw the cat, she would be the first to learn about it. It should not be a problem for her to beat the Soaring Dragon Elder. After an unknown period of time, when Li Qingshan opened his eyes again, the cave was completely dark. There was no luxurious carpet or exquisite incense burner, it was completely empty. Everything that Bai Chen had experienced during the day seemed unreal. The sound of the waterfall was close at hand. It was deafening and emitted moist water vapor and brilliant light. It seemed strangely tranquil. He called out to Little and walked out of the cave. Passing through the curtain of water hanging down from the waterfall, a bright moon hung in the sky. Xian Yu sat on a big rock and looked up at the moonlit night. Her entire body was enveloped in a layer of moonlight and the crescent moon on her forehead flickered. She suddenly looked back and smiled. "Da Hey, you're awake. It's time to set off." Li Qingshan was startled and nodded. Then, her figure suddenly appeared on top of Li Qingshan's head. The afterimage remained in place and did not dissipate for a long time. This was definitely not something that could be done with speed alone. "It's shadow shift, idiot." The voice came from above, but when Li Qingshan looked into the water, he couldn't see her. It's the moon concealment technique, idiot." Li Qingshan came to a realization. It was no wonder she could flee so far despite being surrounded and intercepted. Teleportation and concealment. Just how many people could catch her with these two moves? Can't you just conceal yourself and head north? Once I use my demonic energy, I'll be discovered. Otherwise, why would I bring you along? Are you leaving or not? Xian Yu was impatient. Li Qingshan leaped out of the pool and chose a direction to head north. The boundless mountains were like a giant dragon, stretching from the southwest to the northeast, spanning thousands of miles. The mountains were deep, the forests were dense, and the cliffs were dangerous. It was a forbidden zone for humans. Li Qingshan had gazed at this mountain range for 10 years, but this was the first time he had ventured so deep into it. The vegetation was dense, and as far as the eye could see, there were ancient trees that reached into the sky. The canopies of the trees stretched out and covered the sky. Because it was winter, the leaves had withered, allowing rays of moonlight to fall, making the atmosphere even more serene and serene. Because he was worried that he would cause too much of a commotion and be discovered, affecting his escape plan, Li Qingshan did not walk very quickly. However, after his transformation, every step he took easily covered a distance of several zhong, so he did not seem slow. Although he was a shut-in in his previous life, he had often yearned for the life of a backpacker. In this life, he had finally realized this dream, although the way he had realized it was a little strange. He admired the scenery of the mountains along the way and did not feel bored. However, he was not bored, but Xian Yu was bored to death. She kept muttering, "Tu miao, tu miao." She jumped from the top of his head to his left shoulder, and then from his left to his right. She squeezed together with Little Anne, teasing Little and did not like her behavior and also ran around on Li Qingshan's body. Although the two of them were very light, Li Qingshan felt as if there were two monkeys on his body. After a while, He could not take it anymore. Quiet down. You dare to speak to master like that? Xian Yu fiercely pounded Li Qingshan's head. Li Qingshan bellowed out. Suddenly, he took off madly, charging forwards with a startling momentum. Stupid big black, forget it, forget it. I won't bully you anymore. Xian Yu patted Li Qingshan's head and giggled. Her bell-like laughter rang through the forest. When she was bored, Xian Yu would search all over Li Qingshan's body. Soon, she found the cursive sword calligraphy that Li Qingshan had hidden in his thick, crimson hair. Before Li Qingshan could stop her, or rather, it was useless to stop her. He opened the scroll, and a spiritual light appeared. Xian Yu was also shocked by the sword aura and sword intent it emitted. She patted her chest and flipped the cursive sword calligraphy in her hand. It was exactly the same as when Li Qingshan had first obtained it. She also had an illiterate expression. You still have something like this. This is a spiritual artifact that only humans can use, right? I think you're pretty amazing. Li Qingshan said, this is mine. What's yours is mine. Also, who cares about this broken thing of yours? This master has seen countless magic artifacts and treasures. It's just a spiritual artifact. Xian Yu tossed her hand back to Li Qingshan. Then, she played with the locust wood tablet. The edges of the tablet were already burnt, and it did not look very impressive. What is this? There's no spiritual qi at all. The craftsmanship is also so poor. Nanan, what is the meaning of this? When Li Qingshan touched his waist, and sure enough, it was empty. Before he could even say anything, Xiaoan extended his hand to take the wooden tablet. How could Xian Yu let him succeed? She dodged it with a gentle sway, but Xiaoan refused to give up. Xian Yu dodged several of Xiaoan's attacks in the blink of an eye. You don't have to be so anxious about a spiritual artifact. Tell me what this is for, and I'll give it back to you. Li Qingshan stopped Little Anne. This is a promise. What promise? Although Li Qingshan was unwilling to say, he knew that she was curious. She would not give up until she reached her goal. I promised to send him home. His home is in the south. Xian Yu was stunned. I couldn't tell that you treat your pet so well. He's not my pet. Chapter 93. What are you doing? Li Qingshan's horns were harder than steel. Now that they were carved, he felt his bones tremble and itch. Don't move, Xian Yu said. Li Qingshan moved with all his might. He even reached out to grab his head, but she was very agile and did not let Li Qingshan grab her. After a while, she said, it's done. She then took out a bronze mirror and showed it to Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan saw that the words North Moon were carved on his horns, one on the left and one on the right. I'll paint it a little more to make it more clear. That will be my promise. Xian Yu chuckled. You can go die. Li Qingshan flew into a rage. When the sky was about to brighten, they found a natural cave to rest in. Li Qingshan's face was cold. He stretched out his hand, spirit pill. Xian Yu smiled. Be good, don't be angry. Come, open your mouth. She held the spirit pill, unwilling to put it in Li Qingshan's palm. Their eyes met. After a while, Li Qingshan opened his mouth and bit down on her hand. His white teeth were like sharp blades. Not to mention her slender wrist, he could even bite through a steel frame. Xian Yu retracted her hand and Li Qingshan only ate the spirit pill. She then touched Li Qingshan's head. You're so fierce. Li Qingshan ate the spirit pill and went to meditate, continuing to cultivate. When he wasn't cultivating, he held the mirror and touched the two words on the horns. He sighed, wondering if he could erase them. At this moment, he still did not know that these two words engraved not only a promise, but also the name of the demon king of a generation. Therefore, for several days, the three of them went out at night. Xian Yu was bored, so she bullied Li Qingshan for fun. Although Li Qingshan tried to resist, it was useless. In the end, he could only let it be. After all, as long as he ate the spirit pill, his cultivation would increase day by day. There would be a day when he would become the master. Over the past few days, Li Qingshan had learnt a lot about diamonds from Xian Yu. Diamonds that had yet to refine a demon core would often have low intelligence. They could only be regarded as powerful wild beasts, which was why they were called demons. Only those that had formed their spirit pill could be called demons. Demons were also divided into different levels. Like humans, they were based on passing the heavenly tribulation. After passing the heavenly tribulation, they were called demon generals. After passing the heavenly tribulation, they were called demon generals. After passing the heavenly tribulation, they were called 10 demon kings. The 10 demon kings each occupied a region and had countless demon commanders and demon generals under them. Although the division of territory was slightly different from the administrative divisions of humans, there were still similarities. The demon king of the Azure province was the dragon king of the sea. Xian Yu was a demon at the level of demon general. She had just stepped into the realm of the strong in this world, but she was already so powerful. Li Qingshan could not imagine what realm the demon commanders and demon kings above her were at. However, a flame seemed to burn in his heart. Be it as a human or a demon, he had to be the strongest so that he could not be trampled on by others. At this moment, Xian Yu was humming a song as she stood on Li Qingshan's head. She grabbed Li Qingshan's horns and looked into the distance. Li Qingshan could not help but imagine the scene of holding her in his palm and listening to her call him master. A flame surged in his lower abdomen again, but it was not just his fighting spirit. Li Qingshan was filled with ambition and desire. Just as he was fantasizing, a gust of wind rushed down from the treetops. A bloody mouth opened wide and swallowed him. Xian Yu, who was invisible, was the first to bear the brunt of it. She casually waved her hand. "Your reaction is too slow." She drew a silver arc in the air. A snake head the size of a water tank fell to the ground. Blood spurted out. It was a patterned python that had been hiding in the forest. Li Qingshan avoided the blood and looked up to see the snake's body coiled around the tree trunk. It was dozens of feet long and had the same color as the tree trunk. If one did not look carefully, they would not be able to see it. It was a living python disaster. Although he had seen many strange things, he could not help but be amazed that there were such strange and terrifying creatures in this world. If it came to a human village, it would be able to easily slaughter everyone. Li Qingshan smelled the demonic qi on the snake and knew that it was a so-called demonic beast. He had read many wuxia novels and immediately climbed up the tree to retrieve the snake's gallbladder. Only then did he discover that the snake's skin was extremely tough. Without the infusion of demonic qi, he still spent a lot of effort to break it open. One could imagine how terrifying this demonic beast would be if it was alive. It was only because it had chosen the wrong target that it was killed by Xian Yu. Grabbing the greenish-black snake's gallbladder, Li Qingshan, in the spirit of not being afraid of pain, closed his eyes and swallowed it in one gulp under Little An's shocked gaze. "Why did you swallow the poison sac?" Xian Yu asked curiously. "What? Poison sac?" Li Qingshan's expression changed. His originally pale face became even more ashen. His heartbeat sped up as the poison attacked his heart. To put it bluntly, Li Qingshan had never done something like retrieving a snake's gallbladder in both of his lives. How could he become a wilderness survival expert after just one transmigration? Meow, ha 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 ha. Xian Yu fell to the ground laughing. Seeing that Li Qingshan had fallen to the ground from the poison, she took out a round ball from the snake's body and stuffed it into Li Qingshan's mouth. "Here, this is the snake's gallbladder." Li Qingshan's body had already stiffened. He forcefully swallowed the snake's gallbladder, but the poison only eased slightly. Xian Yu then took out a spiritual medicine from the bell. "This is a poison-dispelling pill." Li Qingshan lay down for a while, waiting for the medicine to take effect. Only then did he sit up. He said to the worried Little Anne, "I'm fine." Xian Yu then took out another spiritual medicine and gave it to him. "This is your reward." "What reward? This is really too funny. In the future, you must continue to work hard to make this master happy." Thus, Li Qingshan accepted the pill with a pale face. Little Anne spat out the corpse incineration blood flame and quickly incinerated the giant python demonic beast. This could be considered as revenge for Li Qingshan. The blood flame burned the python until there was nothing left but a snake skeleton. It spun in the air and returned to his mouth. These demonic beasts' blood energy was strong and vigorous. Even 100 people's blood energy couldn't compare to it. It was extremely beneficial to him. Xian Yu was stunned. "So this is what you eat, little white." Li Qingshan saw this and thought about how he should help him find some more food. As they went deeper into the boundless mountain range, the trees grew taller. Li Qingshan, who was more than 10 feet tall, often felt small. Along the way, they met more and more demonic beasts. All kinds of creatures that only existed in legends and imagination appeared in front of him. Giant birds with wingspans of more than 10 feet and surrounded by wind and lightning flew across the sky. Spiders the size of tables with ghost faces on their backs weaved a spider web the size of a football field between dozens of towering ancient trees. Chapter 94. At a time like this, Li Qingshan didn't want to cause too much trouble. The demonic beasts that dared to attack Li Qingshan were all shockingly powerful. Xian Yu also became more and more cautious. She didn't attack casually and carefully retracted her demonic qi. Li Qingshan often had to go through a bitter battle before he could continue on his journey. As he fought, he became more and more skilled in battle. Against these terrifying demonic beasts, he didn't have many tricks up his sleeves. Most of the time, he had to use brute force against brute force and fight his way through. But he also encountered many demonic beasts that were extremely difficult to deal with. It was all thanks to Little An's blood corpse incineration flame that he performed miraculous feats, burning many demonic beasts to death. He was even more ferocious than Li Qingshan. This divine ability didn't show itself at the start, but the further they went, the more powerful it became. And as more demonic beasts were burned to death, the blood corpse incineration flame also became more and more ferocious. Wherever it went, it was invincible. Even Xian Yu kept glancing at it. She didn't know what divine ability or Dharma art he cultivated, but it seemed to have a suppressive effect on all living beings with flesh and blood. But Little An couldn't speak, so she couldn't ask him anything. Li Qingshan could only say that he already knew how to use it. And then, Little An couldn't reconstruct his fleshly body. It seemed that he needed humans as sacrifices. There was nothing he could do about it. He could only wait until he regained his human form. But along the way, they never encountered a demon general or a demonic beast with a yarrow core. It wasn't that Li Qingshan was lucky. Many times, as Li Qingshan was walking forward, Xian Yu would suddenly give the order to stop or turn around. And demonic beasts were like wild beasts. They also had their own hunting grounds that ordinary people wouldn't be able to detect. Xian Yu could keenly sense the changes and strength of the demonic qi. Then, she would circle around some dangerous areas. Most of the time, she would be moving along the borders of the invisible territory. Meanwhile, Li Qingshan was in charge of controlling the general direction. Along the way, their relationship became much more harmonious. In other words, Li Qingshan's tolerance had become much stronger. As he practiced the spirit turtle's method of qi suppression, he could feel his irritable heart gradually settle down. This was all thanks to the pills and Xuanyue's extremely cute appearance, which greatly increased Li Qingshan's tolerance. Or in other words, there was nothing he could do even if he did not want to. Of course, what encouraged him to cultivate now was no longer just transforming into a human form, but also the appearance of a certain cat calling him master. According to the theory that a white swan from afar was not as good as braised pork nearby, the idea of marrying Jiyu Yangying as his wife naturally took a backseat. As for Xian Yu, it was not just braised pork. It was a feast for gluttons. Both of them stood before him for him to choose. He really was troubled. He compared it many times in his head, but he failed to come up with an answer. While the frog was still hopping on the ground, it began to struggle over which swan was better. It even considered the 12 ways to eat a swan. As a result, Li Qingshan became filled with hope for the future as he indulged in these lustful thoughts. Before he knew it, many days had passed. On this day, Xian Yu suddenly whispered into Li Qingshan's ear, "Stop." Li Qingshan stopped in a hurry, concealing his aura according to the method taught in the spirit turtle's method of qi suppression. A series of heavy footsteps rang out from the distance. A huge lizard that resembled a dinosaur walked past them. If it were a real dinosaur, Li Qingshan would not be so afraid. However, the huge lizard breathed out strands of cold air. Wherever it passed by, the vegetation would all turn into ice sculptures. What heavy demon qi! Li Qingshan had learnt quite a few things as well, such as determining the strength of an opponent through their demon qi. When the huge ice lizard walked past, Shen Yu asked in surprise, "How did you do it? How can you conceal your aura so completely? Is this your innate ability, meow? But didn't you condense a demon core? Don't tell me you're a spiritual beast too." "I don't know either. I just need to hold my breath." Li Qingshan already knew that diamonds were not like humans who pursued ever-changing techniques. Instead, they constantly dug into their own strength and practiced their innate abilities. Although they lacked agility and flexibility, they were usually extremely powerful. Innate abilities were not innate. They could only be awakened after condensing a demon core, and they would grow stronger as they grew stronger. They might even awaken even more innate abilities. Shadow displacement and moon concealment were Xuanyue's innate abilities. They were extremely rare abilities for movement and concealment. She was probably not a regular cat demon, but some kind of spiritual cat. TSK. Li Qingshan's insincere words made Shen Yu feel disdain. However, she did not probe further. Diamonds were often unwilling to tell others about their innate abilities. However, in her eyes, Li Qingshan seemed more and more mysterious. Suddenly, a beam of light streaked across the sky, and a sword-like gaze swept across the land. Li Qingshan's eyes were sharp, and he saw the figure in the beam of light at a glance. The soaring dragon elder also saw Li Qingshan on the ground. "Demon General? But your demon aura is too weak. It was still rare to see a humanoid demon. What is that?" He also saw little and beside Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan met the sword-like gaze, and his heart was filled with fear. It was as if a divine sword was hanging above his head, about to behead him the next moment. This was a sword immortal. Although he had seen Jiyu Yangying's graceful figure, he was still filled with shock when he saw the legendary sword immortal. Who had not dreamed of flying across the sky on a sword? Afterwards, he suddenly remembered his current identity and appearance. He was a demon. If the sword immortal descended from the sky, how was he supposed to deal with it? Only when the streak of light shot past him without stopping did Li Qingshan let out a sigh of relief. The soaring dragon elder personally believed he had important matters to attend to, so he would not waste any effort on a puny demon like him. As for Shen Yu, she even held her breath just now. Only then did she say, "Oh no, it's someone from the Sword Collection Palace. Fortunately, my moon concealment is powerful, or I'd be done for. Of course, it's all thanks to that cat of yours. I'll reward you with a pill later." She rubbed Li Qingshan's head. If she had been in a hurry, she would have been discovered already. "What Sword Collection Palace? That person's coming for you." Li Qingshan sensed an ill omen. This mission was much more dangerous than he had imagined it to be. Shen Yu did not hide anything either. She roughly explained the conflict between the Dark Queen and the Bright Queen, which made Li Qingshan's expression even uglier. Even holding the pill made him feel like it was scalding hot. That was an important figure renowned across the entire Green Province. Someone as insignificant as him really would not be able to survive even if he had several lives if he was dragged into a vortex like that. Shen Yu encouraged him. "Don't be so worried. As long as we escape to the Dragon Province, that old bastard won't be bold enough to chase after us no matter how bold he is. By then, we'll be free to soar through the skies and leap through the oceans." Mio ha 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 ha. Li Qingshan was not as optimistic as her, but he was already on the verge of death. No matter how dangerous the path ahead was, he could only take a gamble. Chapter 95. I've never been human, so what's a conscience? Can I eat it? Hehe, you've finally admitted that I'm your master. Shen Yu smiled from ear to ear and coughed gently. As long as you yell for master to save Meow, I'll definitely come and protect you. Li Qingshan said, I'd rather die. Shen Yu said, if you're so uncute, you'll be abandoned by master. Li Qingshan said, please abandon me as soon as possible. As they argued, they set off once again. However, As if a shadow had shrouded his heart, Li Qingshan became much more careful with his subsequent movements. He did his best to travel through the dense forests and mountains. If he came across any demonic beasts, he would avoid them as much as he could. He would not get caught up in battle. As his cultivation deepened, his method of concealing his aura became better and better. Demonic beasts with sensitive senses would often walk past him, but they would not be able to detect him at all. Xian Yu admired herself for making the right choice. She fed Li Qingshan the pills she had without holding back. However, this was probably because she was used to being extravagant. Moreover, Li Qingshan felt like she was trying to fatten him up so that he could be used as a meat shield. Finally, they traveled in peace for many more days. Xian Yu said, "We're not far from the Dragon Province anymore." When day arrived, the three of them rested in a natural cave. However, it was not a sealed cave. Instead, it was endlessly dark and deep. Cold wind blew out from within, leading to who knew where. Xian Yu rested in the cat basket, while Li Qingshan and Little An cultivated to the side. Rustling sounds rang out from underground, growing denser and closer. Li Qingshan opened his eyes, but he saw that Xian Yu had already stood up. She pricked up her ears, clearly having heard the sounds as well. "There's demon qi." In the darkness, countless eyes lit up. They were densely packed together, and there were even countless cracks, enough to make people shiver from the bottom of their hearts. There were demonic beasts emerging from underground, and there was more than one. Li Qingshan was already used to this kind of life. He and Little An were on guard, while Xian Yu consciously hid herself. The rats came out from the depths of the cave like a tide. Even though Li Qingshan was used to seeing all kinds of demonic beasts, he still frowned when he saw this scene. However, this was only the beginning. The rats that came out of the cave were getting bigger and bigger. The small ones were the size of dogs, and the big ones were the size of bears. The cave was instantly drowned by a sea of rats. From top to bottom, it was crowded with all kinds of rats. All of them were staring at Li Qingshan. The sound of teeth grinding joined together and echoed in the cave, making people panic. Li Qingshan showed no fear. Their nemesis was here. Then, he felt Xian Yu on him tremble slightly. He lowered his voice and mocked, "You are actually afraid of rats? Too disgusting. What kind of place did you choose? How dare you? Hurry up and kill it, meow." Xian Yu had never seen such a thing in the prefecture overseer's manner. Li Qingshan said maliciously, "Isn't this your favorite food? You can use it for dinner. Hurry up and eat." Revenge was an eye for an eye. As for the place, he probably had no choice. These rat spirits were far stronger than ordinary rats. They had probably opened up the entire area into a rat hole. No matter where he chose to stay, he would inevitably end up at their doorstep. "I'll eat you first." Before Li Qingshan could finish his sentence, he felt a pain in his ear. Xian Yu had bitten his ear. However, other than the sharp pain from her teeth, he could also feel her warm lips and the tip of her tongue. He was actually enjoying it. "I don't have that kind of hobby." Li Qingshan shook his head. Little An set the fire. Little An had been waiting for this moment. He jumped up and spat out blood flames at the rats. The rats squeaked. The weak, regular rats were immediately reduced to ashes. Their flesh and blood fanned the flames, while the larger rats were covered in lust. They lunged towards Li Qingshan and bit him. Their great life force was evident. However, the stronger their vitality, the more vigorous the blood incineration flames. With countless rat spirits as fuel, the blood incineration flames soared into the air and formed a fire snake in the cave. It opened its mouth and bit at the larger rats. Little An was becoming more and more proficient in using the Dharma spells. He was practically self-taught. Seeing their natural enemy appear, the frightened rat spirits fled in panic. Li Qingshan was still fearful. It was all thanks to Little An's powerful Dharma spells. Otherwise, he would have been at a disadvantage if he had been overwhelmed by so many rats. Especially the steel teeth of those rat spirits. They were clearly not vegetarians. Even if he had one, he would have been disgusted to death. "Be careful." Xian Yu had already let go of Li Qingshan's ear and whispered. Li Qingshan only felt a warm breeze enter his ear. Before he could savor the taste, he also felt a powerful demonic aura coming from the depths of the cave. Swoosh! A yellow light shot out, piercing through the fire snake and hitting Little Anne, sending him flying. Little Anne! Li Qingshan hurriedly caught Little Anne. He saw cracks appearing on his body. One had to know that ever since he started cultivating, his body had become even harder than steel. It was clear how terrifying the might of this attack was. The yellow light was like a living creature. It turned in the air and shot at Li Qingshan. It was so fast that no one could react in time. Xian Yu made a grabbing motion and caught the yellow light in her hand. Opening her palm, she saw a spinning yellow bead. Yarrow core. The newcomer was a demon that had refined a demonic core. With a loud rumble, an elephant-sized rat charged out of the cave. Its eyes shone brightly. It clearly had intelligence. It stared at the demonic core that was bound by something in the air. Then, it screeched at Li Qingshan. This was Li Qingshan's first time fighting a demon that had refined a demonic core. He immediately felt how terrifying it was. His body's instincts were constantly warning him that he was not a match for this thing. A yellow light flashed in the rat spirit's eyes. Under Li Qingshan's feet, an earth awl suddenly pierced upwards. Something unexpected happened. The earth awl was so fast that Li Qingshan could not react in time. Xian Yu carried Li Qingshan and flew into the air. The earth awl stabbed 10 feet into the ground before finally losing its momentum. When Li Qingshan looked down, he was already covered in cold sweat. Little Anne sent the blood flames towards the rat spirit again, but they were blocked by the yellow light. He was unable to advance any further. The rat spirit screeched. In the air, the demonic core trembled even more violently. It was in a hurry to withdraw it. Take it. Xian Yu casually tossed the demonic core to Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan caught it in a hurry. He had never expected the demonic core to be so powerful. Even when he used all his strength, it almost fell out of his hand. The technique of the rat spirit was already so vicious and vicious. If he withdrew the demonic core, he would have nowhere to stand. The spirit turtle suppresses the seas, suppressing evil spirit. Li Qingshan suddenly began to circulate his demon qi madly, firmly suppressing the demonic core in his hand. Seeing how it could not succeed, the rat spirit shrieked and charged over. Its huge body was as fast as lightning, showing no signs of slowing down at all. Chapter 96. Dang! The horns and teeth clashed, sounding like metal clashing. Boom! There was a loud sound, and the cave shook. The rat spirit pushed Li Qingshan into the stone wall. Li Qingshan's feet left 2 deep marks on the ground. The strength that he was most proud of was not this rat spirit's match at all. A demon with a spirit core and a demon without one were 2 completely different things. Li Qingshan was alarmed. He saw the rat spirit's eyes shine with a cunning light. Another earth awl pierced the immobilized Li Qingshan from the stone wall behind him. Little Anne held his sword with both hands and chopped at the rat spirit's neck. A long rat tail swept it away like a steel whip. Xian Yu attacked again. For sharp lights shot out from her claws, and the rat spirit's eyes filled with fear. The sharp lights easily tore through the rat spirit's protective layer of demonic qi. The unstoppable rat spirit was sliced into several pieces, dying on the spot. No matter how strong it looked, a demon general-level demon could not withstand a single blow from Xian Yu, who had already undergone one heavenly tribulation. Li Qingshan kicked the rat spirit's corpse away. The spirit core in his hand was no longer beating. He touched his back and saw a bulge on the stone wall. If he had been any slower, he would have been severely injured even if he did not die. Too stupid. Xian Yu evaluated. If not for you, would I have come to this place? Li Qingshan had cultivated for less than half a year, while the rat demon's lifespan was over a century at the very least. With such an absolute difference in strength, how could it be so easy for the weak to defeat the strong? Xian Yu was about to speak when she suddenly sensed something. Her expression changed. Quick, let's go. We have to change places. Although Li Qingshan did not sense anything, seeing how serious she was, he immediately turned and left with Little Anne. The karst cave trembled, and the entrance of the cave, which was originally several dozen feet wide, suddenly trembled. It was as though it had come to life. It contracted and bit down, completely sealing off the cave. Not even a ray of light shone in. Xianyu whispered, "Withdraw your demonic qi." Then, she turned invisible again. Li Qingshan withdrew his demonic qi and listened attentively. Another sound came from the depths of the cave. A large rat crawled out and stood on 2 feet. He did not even look at Li Qingshan. Instead, he yelled at the top of his lungs with a strange tone, "The Rat King has arrived." Li Qingshan was stunned. He was not only surprised that the rat could speak, but also surprised that a group of monsters could be so arrogant. Then, 16 rats that stood on 2 legs walked out from the depths of the cave, carrying a throne on their shoulders. On the palanquin sat a fat man with a golden crown on his head. He looked like a king. He had a shifty-eyed face, revealing long rat teeth and dragging a rat tail behind him. Behind it were 2 female rats that looked like maids. He raised 2 large fans. Xianyu beamed when she saw this, but Li Qingshan could not smile. He had already taken human form, so he was at least a demon general. And the rat spirits that carried the palanquin exuded a demonic qi that was even stronger than the large rat spirit. The Rat King said lazily, "Who trespassed on my Black Rat Mountain and killed my great General Whitefang?" He completely ignored Li Qingshan, who stood over 3 meters tall in front of him. If it were not for the fact that his voice was far too shrill, he really did have the demeanor of a king. The rat that looked like a eunuch shouted, "King, it's this guy." All the rats said in unison, "Wise king." Only then did the Rat King act like he had just seen Li Qingshan. He studied him up and down. "What kind of demon are you?" He saw how Li Qingshan had assumed human form and became fearful. Usually, only demon generals that had survived heavenly tribulations could do this. However, he could not sense any demonic qi from Li Qingshan, so he could not help but be more careful. The rat spirit's body that had been broken into pieces on the ground seemed to have become proof. Li Qingshan acutely noticed the change in the Rat King's expression and suddenly understood why Xianyu had asked him to restrain his demonic qi. He could not help but admire her sharp mind. He said boldly, "I am the old demon of Black Mountain. You, General Whitefang, are too reckless. You dared to sneak up on me and have already been killed by me. Now that you are blocking my way, are you also going to fight to the death with me?" As he spoke, he took a step forward. He could not help but say it. Li Qingshan's demonic body was extremely mighty. His horns were like spears and his claws were like blades. The Rat King shrank back. He lived up to his reputation of being as timid as a rat. If Li Qingshan was an ordinary monster, he would definitely pounce on him and eat him up. However, Li Qingshan was suspected to be a demon general, so he immediately shrank back. He had no intention of avenging his subordinate. "It's a misunderstanding, a misunderstanding. May I know which demon general you are working for?" Li Qingshan did not expect the hierarchy in the demon world to be so strict. He still had to follow Big Brother. Xianyu softly whispered a name into Li Qingshan's ear. Li Qingshan immediately said, "I am working for Lord Mo Yu. He specially sent me to the Boundless Mountain to handle some matters." The Rat King was filled with deep veneration. He even jumped down from his throne. "So you are from the Ink Sea. You are Lord Mo Yu's envoy. Could it be because of that cat demon?" Li Qingshan was stunned, but he nodded on the surface. "Yes." The Rat King said, "Didn't I already tell you? As long as we see it, we will definitely capture that cat demon. We will not disappoint Lord Mo Yu." He thought to himself, no wonder he sent this person here. He can conceal his demonic qi so well. He is indeed suitable for tracking. The corner of Li Qingshan's eye twitched. No wonder Xianyu was so careful deep in the mountains, maintaining the state of moon concealment at all times. It turned out that not only humans, but even demons were searching for her. She really did not have a foothold in the green region. The danger of this mission far surpassed what he had imagined at the start. If she were to reveal herself now and engage in a chaotic battle, even if she could win, it would alarm all the demons in the Boundless Mountain. They would come together to capture her, causing their escape to fail completely. Li Qingshan became even more careful. He carelessly said, "That would really be like a flood rushing against the temple of the Dragon King. But you are a rat, and she is a cat. Aren't you afraid of being eaten?" Xuanyue's hand pinched fiercely on Li Qingshan's back. "Why would I eat such a filthy thing?" The Rat King said to the eunuch rat in charge of passing on the message. "Tell me, what is this king's nickname?" The eunuch rat said, "Cat-eating mouse." The rats then said, "Wise king." Xuanyu gritted her teeth in hatred. Her hand pinched Li Qingshan's back. The Rat King laughed proudly. Seeing Li Qingshan's face twitch, he asked, "What's wrong?" Li Qingshan gritted his teeth and said, "It's nothing. Keep your guard up. I still have important matters to attend to, so I'll take my leave first." With a wave of the Rat King's hand, the cave returned to its original state. Sunlight shone in. Li Qingshan turned around and left. The Rat King stroked the rat whiskers under his nose. "I keep feeling that something's not right. This is the Black Rat Mountain. By right, I should be the old demon of the Black Mountain." The rats said, "Wise king." Li Qingshan left the Black Rat Mountain and walked for another few dozen li. Xuanyu said, "Sooner or later, I'm going to fry this nest of dead rat." Li Qingshan shouted in a low voice, "Get down here." Chapter 97. Xuanyu widened her eyes. "How dare you be so rude to me, your master?" Her eyes widened even further. Li Qingshan stared at Xuanyu. "You've never mentioned this before. You're clearly hiding it on purpose." Under his intense gaze, Xuanyu panicked for some reason. She changed the topic. "Haha, there's a meow? You didn't even ask." Li Qingshan sat down. "That's enough." "What? Say that again." Xuanyu bared her claws and threatened. Li Qingshan said, "You're powerful. If you encounter danger, you can teleport away, but will most likely die. If you want to kill us, then kill us. I don't want to be used by you anymore. Just let Little An go." Little An grabbed Li Qingshan's sleeve and shook her head desperately. Xuanyu said, "Do you think I don't dare?" She swung her claws as fast as lightning. Li Qingshan definitely could not dodge it. His flesh was not much tougher than the rat demon's either. The claws stopped before Li Qingshan's neck, only inches away. Xuanyue's chest heaved. She turned around and said, "I can't be bothered to kill you. If you want to go, then go. Do as you please." Li Qingshan glanced at her deeply before turning around. He was about to take a step. Xuanyu grabbed Li Qingshan's pinky and said softly, "The Dragon Province isn't far from here. We agreed on it." Li Qingshan turned around, but she was looking elsewhere. She was not looking at him. The sunlight fell on her eyelashes, casting a shadow over her lake-like eyes. It seemed to reveal a hint of sorrow and weakness, which tugged at his heartstrings. After a long silence, Li Qingshan said, "All right then. I'll send you off again. I'll just treat it as fulfilling our agreement." Xuanyue's complexion immediately cleared up. She stuck out her tongue and smiled slyly. How easy to coax. She no longer seemed sorrowful or weak at all. Li Qingshan's head fell to the ground. His face immediately darkened. Little An looked at Li Qingshan with some pity. "Promise. Promise." Xuanyu gleefully jumped around Li Qingshan, and finally leaped onto his head. She urged, "Let's go." Li Qingshan glared at her. They continued to move forward. It had been a long time since he walked under the sun. The winter sun was warm and warm. Unknowingly, a long time had passed, and he had completely adapted to this demon body. Xuanyu said, "Don't feel embarrassed. There's nothing embarrassing about losing to my ultimate move." "Ultimate move?" Xuanyu said, "Actually, I wanted to leave a long time ago, but once the Dark Queen revealed an expression like that, there was nothing I could do." Li Qingshan said, "But in the end, you still left." Xuanyu said proudly, "That's because I'm more ruthless, meow." Li Qingshan said, "This isn't something to brag about. If you are cruel to others, others will also be cruel to you." "Is that meow?" In the Black Rat Mountain, the Rat King lay on the ground, completely burying his head in the soil. All the tiny sounds within 5 kilometers, or even 50 kilometers, reached his ears through the soil. Li Qingshan and Xuanyue's conversation obviously did not escape his ears. The innate abilities of diamonds. Most of them focused on offense and defense, but he knew an extremely rare earth listening technique, which suited his cautious and cowardly nature. He suddenly pulled his head out. His face ashen, he said, as expected, "Something's wrong." The rat said, "Wise king, cut the nonsense, chase." Xuanyue's ears suddenly perked up. "Crap, they're coming, let's go." Li Qingshan took off with his feet and rushed forward madly. With each step, he would leave behind a deep footprint. With his next step, he would travel several dozen meters. Too slow. Xianyu still found it too slow. Li Qingshan said, "Try carrying me while running." Xianyu took out a spirit herb and threw it into Li Qingshan's mouth, then took out a talisman. The color of the talisman was not the usual yellow, but crimson red. The spirit herb dissolved, and a light aura rose. Li Qingshan felt his body lighten by half. The talisman shattered, and a gust of wind wrapped around Li Qingshan's body, making him feel weightless. Li Qingshan took a step, and his body shot up into the sky. The sky was a dazzling blue, and the tall ancient forest was under his feet. The undulating curves of the mountains in the distance seemed like they were about to fly. He looked back, and sure enough, there was billowing smoke and dust rushing over. When he landed on the ground again, he had already adjusted his posture. He leaned forward, and charged forward. Every step he took covered a distance of 100 meters, and the small mountains were no longer an obstacle. He leaped over them. Xianyu stood on his shoulder and laughed. "Charge! Meow ha ha ha!" The billowing smoke and dust swept over at an astonishing speed. Among the smoke and dust, the Rat King was leading. He stepped on a wave formed by countless rats, and when he saw Li Qingshan, he shouted, "Stop!" Xianyu knew that she had been exposed, and did not hide anymore. She made a face. "Only an idiot would stop, stupid idiot." Yellow light flashed through the Rat King's eyes, and earth spikes suddenly stabbed out. Whether it was in terms of speed or strength, they were 10 times more vicious than the Rat General. They would always stab at the spot where Li Qingshan was about to land. Li Qingshan darted left and right, constantly changing directions. As soon as he tilted his body to avoid a stab, there was movement below his feet again. He bellowed out, "The ox demon stamps its hooves," stepping on the spike that had just emerged and using it as a foothold to rise into the air. The pain under his feet was unbearable, but fortunately, his feet had become tough ox hooves, or he would have been crippled. He flew up to 100 meters in the sky, and the blue light dazzled his eyes. He could not care about the pain under his feet. Xianyu pointed at the sky. "Blackie, little white, do you see that? The ice sword cliff is right in front of us." A towering, unbroken ice cliff spanned across the boundless mountain range. It was as if a deity was holding an ice sword, and with one strike, he had cut the dragon-like boundless mountain range into two. That was the boundary between the Azure and Dragon prefectures. Li Qingshan's heart was suddenly filled with hope, as if he had finally seen the end of his journey. Although he understood the principle of looking at a mountain will lead to a dead horse, he knew that the ice cliff was still very far from here. However, he had a feeling that if he could cross that ice cliff, he would definitely reach an unprecedented realm. When he lowered his head, he saw that the originally hard rock layer where he was about to land had become a quicksand field with a radius of 100 meters. His entire body was stuck in the quicksand. The quicksand spun like a whirlpool, emitting a strong suction force. It was as if countless hands were pulling Li Qingshan down into the ground. He was like a tiger falling into a flat land. Even if he had great strength, he could not use it at this moment. The more he struggled, the deeper he sank. The Rat King seized the opportunity and caught up in one go. He laughed loudly. "You've fallen into my trap. How dare you look down on me? All of you, stay here. Wise King." Chapter 98. Great King, it's a cat. The rats were all shocked. They all wanted to flee into the ground in a panic. The cat-eating Rat King had finally found the cat he was looking for. After careful consideration, he came to the conclusion that a regular cat could eat regular rats, so a demon general cat could obviously eat demon general rats. Afterwards, his legs weakened. He said calmly, "Move. Wise be the great king," the rats said. They immediately dug a hole. As a result, a large group of rat diamonds arrived aggressively. As soon as they saw the cat Shen Yu, they immediately fled in a panic. Shen Yu let out another great burst of laughter. Li Qingshan was stunned. How cowardly! The terrifying suction force of the quicksand immediately vanished, and he leapt out of the sandpit. Xuanyue's expression changed. "We've been exposed. Let's go." Li Qingshan suddenly looked back. A streak of light shot over from the distant horizon to the south. He only glanced at it from afar, but the sharp aura seemed to pierce his eyes. He dared not stay any longer. He charged towards the ice-sword cliff. The landscape receded madly. Originally, Li Qingshan felt like he was as fast as the wind, but every time he looked back, the streak of light would get closer. It was within 50 kilometers of him in just a while. Li Qingshan said to Shen Yu, "We can't continue like this. You should go first." Shen Yu said, "What are you talking about? We're almost there." Li Qingshan said, "If we continue like this, we'll be caught. You should go to the Dragon Province yourself." Shen Yu glanced at Li Qingshan and nodded firmly. Then, "Big Blacko, be careful. Don't get killed." In the next moment, she vanished. Who knew where she had moved off to? Li Qingshan immediately concealed his aura and changed directions. He ran towards the east. He did not have any intention of sacrificing himself for the greater good. Sword immortals were very powerful. The strength of the sword immortal did not exist at all. If he were caught, the sword immortal would probably kill him after killing Shen Yu. He would be purged as well. Was he supposed to tell the sword immortal that he was actually a human at a time like this? As a result, he could only let Shen Yu flee first. It was very likely for the sword immortal to choose to hunt down Shen Yu first, and he could use the spirit turtle's method of sea suppression to conceal his aura. Perhaps Shen Yu could escape this calamity, and Shen Yu would not have to be implicated by him. This was the best choice for both of them. Husband and wife are birds of the same forest. When disaster strikes, they fly separately. As for whether they live or die, they can only pray for their own good and leave their fates to fate. Li Qingshan inexplicably had such a thought. The soaring dragon elder had originally been patrolling the skies when he was suddenly alerted by the disturbance at Black Rat Mountain. However, within infinite boundless mountain, it was not uncommon for demonic beasts to kill each other. He didn't really care about it. Demon General. A powerful demonic aura that only a demon general could have surged forth. Only then did he notice it, and he focused his senses. A moment later, an even more powerful demonic aura rose into the sky. He immediately reacted and chased after it on his sword. Battles between demonic beasts were rather common, but battles between demon generals were extremely rare. This was because demon generals that had undergone the first heavenly tribulation all possessed a certain level of intelligence. They were nominally under the command of the same demon king and were led by various demon commanders. They would not fight each other for no good reason. If nothing went wrong, the cat demon he was looking for was right there. Sure enough, he locked onto the demon chi from several hundred kilometers away, and on the other side was the strange demon he had seen once before. He could not help but feel irritated that he had almost been tricked. Originally, he thought the cat demon would move about carefully alone. He never thought it would have a helper. It was no wonder that he had failed to find it after so many days. The streak of light rapidly drew closer. Suddenly, the cat demon vanished from the smaller demon's shoulder, while the smaller demon ran off towards the east. The soaring dragon elder hesitated. He ignored Li Qingshan and continued towards the ice sword cliff. He had to stop the cat demon from leaving the Green Province. Once it reached the Dragon Province, it would be troublesome. When the sword-like gaze swept past Li Qingshan, he felt like all the blood in his body had stopped flowing. Only when the streak of light shot off towards the north did he ease up. He ran for another 5 kilometers and arrived in a deep valley. He dove in and hid under a cliff, concealing all of his demon chi. He exhaled deeply. He had finally dodged a bullet. Li Qingshan secretly calculated his gains from this trip. He had obtained several dozen pills from Shen Yu, and every single one of them was even more effective than the spiritual ginseng, allowing his spirit turtle's method of Qi suppression to advance rapidly. Right now, there were still over a dozen pills that he had yet to ingest, so he carefully stored them away in a porcelain bottle. If he ate the remaining pills, he would probably be close to the first layer of the spirit turtle's method of Qi suppression. He would cultivate arduously for a while longer, recover his human form, and return to human society. And he would be able to shake off that wretched cat demon who claimed to be his master. It was killing two birds with one stone. Li Qingshan rubbed Little An's head with a smile. I'll be able to complete my promise with you very soon. Li Qingshan did not move at all, allowing time to pass by slowly. Suddenly, he felt the ground shake, but it vanished very quickly. Then, it shook again. The sky slowly darkened. Dark clouds filled the sky again, and it began to snow heavily. It was accompanied by whistling winds, blanketing the surroundings. Li Qingshan felt even more at ease. In such weather, it would be even more impossible to find him. It would be easier for Shen Yu to escape too. When he thought of her, he actually felt rather reluctant to part with her. However, she must have arrived in the Dragon Province already. She would be able to live the free life she wanted very soon. Let's just hope that we're fated to meet again. Myriad Sword Technique. In the snowstorm, a bellow boomed out like a clap of thunder, shattering the snowstorm and interrupting his thoughts. Boundless killing intent enveloped him. Oh no! Li Qingshan leaped up with Little An in his arms. When he looked back in midair, he saw thousands of streaks of light crisscrossing in the snowstorm. They tore apart the cliff he had been hiding in, causing it to collapse with a rumble. Li Qingshan fell onto a dried-up stream. Just as he raised his head, a 3-foot-long sword pointed straight at his forehead. It was only 3 inches away. The soaring dragon elder wielded his sword in his right hand and stood on a rock. He stared at Li Qingshan coldly. Speak. Where did that cat demon run off to? You're the soaring dragon swordsman? When Li Qingshan saw the sword immortal's appearance, he was instantly stunned. The portrait in the Dragon's Gate sect's ancestral hall appeared before his eyes again. The Dragon's Gate sect had been around for several generations. It was at least a century old, while the soaring dragon swordsman only seemed slightly older than the portrait. If he considered the fact that the Dragon's Gate sect had purposefully drawn him younger to protect their venerables, then there was basically no change. Apart from the word immortal, there was no other word that could describe him. However, he was currently being pointed at the head by a terrifying immortal. Chapter 99. You recognize me? Soaring Dragon Elder was able to form a golden core, so his mind was incredibly sharp. You were the one behind the Dragon's Gate sect's incident. Elder Divining's words about severing old ties with him happened to refer to this. Li Qingshan cursed his bad luck. He felt that the mysteries of the heavens were unfathomable. There seemed to be a pair of hands controlling everything, karma, and retribution. He had destroyed the Dragon's Gate sect, and now he met the founder of the Dragon's Gate sect in such a place and in such a manner. However, when he heard that the Soaring Dragon Elder had failed to find Shen Yu, he inexplicably relaxed. At least he had not been wiped out. Therefore, he said honestly, I was the one behind the Dragon's Gate sect. The Dragon's Gate sect ran amok in the village, doing whatever they wanted. In order to steal my spirit ginseng, they tried to harm me and kill me. I destroyed them. The world is fair. The Soaring Dragon Elder was slightly taken aback. Li Qingshan's eloquence surprised him. He was not as ignorant as ordinary fiendish demons. However, when he heard the end, he raised his eyebrows. There was a flash of sword light, dazzling Li Qingshan's eyes. Only when blood spurted from his shoulder did he realize that he had been injured by the sword. It left a terrifying wound that stretched from his shoulder to his chest. A mere fiendish demon dares claim to be fair. A spiritual item is not something a fiendish demon like you deserves to possess. Slaying fiendish demons is the way of justice. Little An spewed out the blood corpse incineration flame, but before it could reach a meter away from the Soaring Dragon Elder, it was forced back by the spiritual energy. The soaring dragon elder glanced at him. What a pity. You have a good physique, but you have fallen to the demonic path. I will send you to hell. Then, he said coldly to Li Qingshan, cut the crap. Tell me where the cat demon went, and I'll give you a quick death. I'll let you reincarnate. Don't be a demon in your next life. Otherwise, I will destroy your soul. He headed north in pursuit. However, he had lost Xuanyue's aura. He used the myriad sword art to shatter dozens of mountains and wreaked havoc in the boundless mountains. However, aside from demon commanders, who could stop him? In the end, he failed to force her out. Xuanyue's two mystical abilities were too suitable for concealment. The soaring dragon elder was in a terrible mood. Since Elder Destiny said that this trip would be a success for sure, he might even be able to fulfill his destiny. Most likely, it was going to happen to this little demon. Li Qingshan said, I don't know. Before his voice died away, blood spurted from his right shoulder. He lowered his head, clenched his fists, and crushed a handful of pebbles. Fiendish demons are all heartless. You're just a pawn it abandoned after being used. It's a waste of time for me to interrogate you. The soaring dragon elder's face was filled with pity and mockery. The sword light exploded, and with a horizontal slash, it slashed towards Li Qingshan's neck. However, Li Qingshan still didn't have the time to react. Even if he had 1,000 tricks up his sleeves, he couldn't use any of them. There was no continuous chatter. His moves were clean and precise, showing no mercy. This was what a sword immortal was like. A beam of silver light descended from the sky and shot towards the soaring dragon elder's head. The light was so serene and divine. Li Qingshan felt like he was hallucinating. It was as if a crack had opened in the dark clouds in the sky, allowing the moonlight to shine through. However, it was just a hallucination. The dark clouds remained as thick as ever, and the snow fell even more violently. Instead, a smile of joy appeared on the soaring dragon elder's face. He abandoned Li Qingshan and twisted his wrist. The light from his sword rushed into the sky. It collided with the silver light, but the sharp light shattered the serene light. It shot straight down, leaving behind a crescent-shaped hole in the ground. The soaring dragon elder fled with the light, and Li Qingshan raised his head. At the top of the valley, within the endless wind and snow, was a rather small figure. The silver light shone from the crescent moon on her forehead. Meow. Ha 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 ha. A familiar laughter pierced through the wind and snow, reaching his heart. Immediately, something indescribable surged through Li Qingshan's chest. However, he said, Idiot, why did you come back? Go to your dragon province. Xianyu said, Don't talk to your masters, Meow. Li Qingshan said, I've said it before. You're not my master. Xianyu said, I clearly heard you calling for master to save me earlier. I didn't. Xianyu laughed aloud. I probably misheard you. Otherwise, you must have called for help inside. Li Qingshan was stunned. Yes, he was calling for help inside, asking for help from someone, but not from this cat demon, as even if she came, it would be useless. Cat demon, you refuse to take the path to heaven. The soaring dragon elder's voice rang out from the sky. Xianyu stuck out her tongue at the soaring dragon elder. She lifted her eyelids and made a face at him. Damned old man, come after me. With a turn of her body, she vanished. The cliff she stood on had already been torn to pieces by the light, and her demon chi vanished once more. The soaring dragon elder said, One sword into 10,000, 10,000 swords reign. The sword in his hand multiplied into 2, then into 3, and in the end, it turned into thousands of swords that filled the sky. Swish, swish, swish. Countless flashes of light descended from the sky like a storm, enveloping the entire valley. This was a terrifying immortal's punishment. Before such a terrifying move, diamonds were like pigs and dogs, while mortals were like ants. All tricks were useless, and all schemes were futile. Li Qingshan raised his head and gazed at the flashes of light that flickered like stars. It was unstoppable. There was only death. The rain of swords pierced through and shattered everything, but Li Qingshan did not die. A petite figure moved and blocked his way. The crescent moon on her forehead shone with silver light, blocking the rain of swords. Within the howling blizzard, The silver light and the rain of swords collided violently, illuminating the gloomy valley like it was daytime. The soaring dragon elder said, "This must be a life-saving move that the Dark Queen, that wretched woman, left for you. I'd like to see how long you can last." He formed a seal with his hand and pointed down. The rain of swords seemed endless. The silver light retreated inch by inch, but Xianyu gritted her teeth and endured. Li Qingshan looked at the petite figure and called out, "Go, hide." "It's useless like this," Xianyu said. "Shut up. How can a master not protect his pet?" "Who treats you as a master?" "Meow. I'm not discussing this with you." In the blink of an eye, the silver light was pressed to a foot before him, about to shatter. Even higher up in the sky, a huge, white dragon over 300 meters long twisted its body as it descended from above with a furious roar. At a closer glance, he discovered that it was not a dragon, but a tornado. It tore apart the snow and hurtled towards the soaring dragon elder. On the other side of the tornado, the jade folding fan in Jiyu Yangying's hand had already been completely unfurled, shining with resplendent light. Soaring dragon elder, stop. The soaring dragon elder made up his mind and completely ignored the tornado behind him. He formed a seal with his hand, and the rain of swords retracted, rapidly condensing together. It shone with dazzling light, vaguely shaped like a ball. It was like an extremely dazzling star, lighting up in the pitch-black sky. Myriad swords returned to one, meteor falls. Jiyu Yangying said, "Be careful." However, her voice was unable to match the speed at which the huge sword fell. Chapter 100. Li Qingshan caught her in his arms. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. This article came from the tornado roared angrily and slammed into the soaring dragon elder's body, smashing him into the ground and pressing him down tightly. It spun rapidly like a drill bit as it drilled downwards. The sturdy frozen ground was destroyed and shattered, dust flying everywhere. The tornado turned from a white dragon of snow to a black dragon of earth. In the mountain valley, large rocks rolled and sand flew everywhere. Jiyu Yangying's expression was dark. She had immediately rushed over after receiving the news from the Rat King of Black Rat Mountain, but she had not expected to be one step too late. Her gaze was fixed on the ground where the tornado had drilled. "Take her away." A golden core expert was not so easily killed. She had enough confidence in a one-on-one battle and would not be at a disadvantage. However, it was almost impossible to protect the two of them. Light shot out of the deep hole the tornado had drilled. Dozens of sword lights instantly tore the tornado to pieces. The soaring dragon elder rose into the air, his body enveloped in a spherical protective light. "Jiyu Yangying, you can't stop me." A thread of blood seeped out of the corner of his mouth. It looked like he had not been well taken after taking that attack head-on. However, the will in his eyes was as indestructible as a tempered divine weapon. "Don't brag." Jiyu Yangying was truly angered. 100 dragons dancing in the heavens. With a wave of her jade folding fan, 100 tornadoes rampaged and attacked the soaring dragon elder from different directions and angles. Everything that stood in the way of the tornadoes was torn to pieces. Deep ravines were left on the ground and mountain walls. Large trees that would require several people to wrap their arms around were uprooted and sucked into the tornadoes. They were torn to pieces. In that moment, there was a wild dance of slaughter. The mountains collapsed and the earth cracked. It was like the end of the world. The soaring dragon elder's expression became more and more determined. He bit the tip of his tongue and spat a mouthful of blood onto the soaring dragon sword. The master of the Black Wind stronghold, Xiong Xiangwu, could use his blood to activate spirit talismans with the body of a mortal and unleash power that far surpassed his own strength. Just what kind of terrifying move would a golden core expert unleash if he used this move? The sword was stained with blood. It immediately began to twist like a living creature. In the dazzling light, it transformed into a golden dragon that was more than 30 meters long. However, it did not look like a dragon. Instead, it was a real dragon with scales and claws. It shook its head and swayed its tail as it clashed with the tornadoes. Unexpectedly, it was able to fight against 100 people alone, and it was not at a disadvantage at all. "You actually..." Jiyu Yangying was shocked. For a golden core expert, it wasn't as simple as a mortal spitting out blood. Instead, it would damage one's own cultivation, so they wouldn't easily use it. The golden dragon destroyed the tornadoes one by one. Its own spiritual light also gradually dimmed. The flying dragon elder took out a magic talisman from the Sumeru ring on his finger and said, "Elder Destiny has calculated that there will be some obstacles on this trip." Purple amulet. Jiyu Yangying's expression became even more solemn. In the Tao of talismans, yellow talismans were the lowest, red talismans were the middle, and purple talismans were the highest. The difference in power between them was like heaven and earth. Purple talismans could only be made by nascent soul cultivators, and they were single-use items. It was extremely rare even for a golden core cultivator. It was only used as a life-saving talisman, yet he was willing to take it out. Heaven and Earth Cage, Seal. Li Qingshan carried Shen Yu in his arms. He leapt up the mountain valley and headed north, towards the ice cliff. Little and followed closely behind. Li Qingshan roared at him, "Go away, don't follow me." If Jiyu Yangying couldn't stop the flying dragon elder and was caught up, following him would only lead to death. Little and still followed, unwilling to leave. Li Qingshan said, "Are you deaf?" With a wave of his hand, he sent him flying dozens of feet away. Little and stared at him blankly. Li Qingshan turned his head away and said, "Find a place to hide. Don't come out no matter what." Then he left resolutely. Li Qingshan carried Shen Yu and advanced towards the ice sword cliff. Even though he was 10 miles away, he could still feel the spiritual light behind him soaring into the sky. Wild winds surged, and his hands were wet, the color of fresh blood intense. Xuanyue's face was pale, and she said weakly, "You are a good master." Li Qingshan said, "Shut up, don't say a word." Shen Yu said, "I am your master after all, can't you be a little more courteous? You get angry at the slightest provocation, you are even more willful than me." He didn't know how long he ran in the snowstorm, whether it was an instant or a year. Suddenly, he raised his head and saw an ice cliff in front of him. They had finally arrived. Looking at it from afar was already shocking. When he stood at the bottom of the ice sword cliff, he was almost stunned by the uncanny workmanship of nature. He couldn't see the top of the cliff when he looked up. It was tens of thousands of feet high, as if it was about to topple over. Li Qingshan gritted his teeth and reached out to touch the ice cliff. A cold chill seeped into his bones. His sharp claws that could cut through metal and jade only left faint scratches on the ice. It was definitely not ordinary ice. Shen Yu opened her eyes and said, "We have finally arrived. Legend has it that this ice sword cliff is a divine sword dropped by a deity. From the day it appeared, it did not melt at all. Instead, it kept freezing and growing. It is very difficult to climb, and you alone won't be able to reach it." Li Qingshan said, "Shut up and hug me." He carried Shen Yu on his back and got her to wrap her arms around his neck. Afterwards, he extended his claws and gripped the ice cliff. Just when he wanted to raise his feet, he discovered that his feet were no longer human feet, but a pair of iron hooves. The ice cliff was as tough as steel, straight and shiny. It was even more difficult to climb than any other cliff. Without a pair of feet, it was impossible to climb. Meow ha ha ha. Shen Yu laughed heartlessly, just like how she used to bully Li Qingshan in the past. However, her laughter became weaker and weaker, easily drowned out by the wind and snow. Thump! Li Qingshan punched the ice cliff heavily and knelt on the ground. He had come here after so much difficulty, yet he was unable to take another step forward. The ice sword cliff was truly like a huge sword, severing all of his hopes. "I refuse to accept this." The spirit turtle's method of sea suppression circulated madly in his body. Almost miraculously, his feet actually recovered. Although they were much larger than regular feet and his nails were sharp, they were actually a pair of feet, not hooves. Originally, he could only recover his human form after reaching the first layer, but he forcefully recovered his feet with a thought in his mind. Shen Yu said in surprise, "How impressive." However, Li Qingshan could not be bothered with joy. He leapt onto the ice cliff. "Let's go." In the snowstorm, Li Qingshan climbed up step by step with Shen Yu on his back. His claws dug deeply into the ice. The coldness constantly seeped into his skin, freezing his bones. He could not see the sky, nor could he see the ground. It was as if the two of them were the only people left in the world, working arduously. What's so good about the Dragon Province? Is the nine-tailed fox empress beautiful? Is she even more beautiful than the Dark Queen? Li Qingshan rambled on. Originally, he constantly told Shen Yu to shut up, but now, he actually chatted away endlessly. This was because he had to do everything he could to remain clear-headed, to prevent the coldness from stealing his mind, to prevent despair from crushing him. This was because Xuanyue's body gradually grew colder and she gradually fell silent. She closed her eyes and leaned against Li Qingshan's back. She answered half-heartedly, "Of course, she's beautiful." Perhaps because her voice was too weak, it was swallowed by the wind. "Hold on. I'll definitely take you. I'll take you to the Dragon Province," Li Qingshan said constantly. Chapter 101. Li Qingshan did not even have the strength to reply. The path ahead was covered in snow and wind. It seemed endless. He only had one thought, and he kept climbing. Shen Yu suddenly whispered in his ear, "I'm sorry. Master has dragged you down." He let go of his arms powerlessly and fell into the abyss of snow and wind. His eyes were closed, and there was even a hint of a smile on his face. Li Qingshan subconsciously reached out with his right hand and grabbed her cold hand tightly. He could not let go, but he could not take a step forward on the ice wall without his right hand. As he stopped moving, the cold invaded his body, and his blood gradually stopped flowing. He was already 3,000 feet above the ground. Even if it was him, if he fell, he would be smashed to pieces. In the snowstorm, he finally let out a hysterical howl, like a trapped beast in a desperate situation. In the snow and wind, two red lights approached, and a figure quickly climbed up. Little and grabbed Shen Yu and carried her on Li Qingshan's back. There was no need to exchange words. Li Qingshan's mouth had already frozen. He freed his right hand and continued climbing. He suddenly saw the end of the seemingly endless ice cliff. He was only a few dozen feet from the top. A large hand grabbed the edge of the cliff, and Li Qingshan climbed up with all his might. He no longer had any strength left in him. He forced himself to stay upright, and with trembling hands, he touched Mo Xuanyue's face. It was cold. His chest did not beat. She was already dead. Li Qingshan suddenly burst into tears. A ray of light pierced through the snow, and the soaring dragon elder appeared at the top of the cliff. His face was pale, and his clothes were tattered. He looked at Shen Yu on the ground, and an expression of as expected appeared on his face. His meteor sword. It was not something an ordinary demon general could bear. However, just in case, he had chased after her at all costs. Furthermore, the things stored in Xuanyue's bell could make up for his losses. A demon general's demon core was also very precious. Li Qingshan wanted to fight for his life, but he did not even have the strength to do so. He questioned, "Why? What did she do wrong?" "Because she's a demon, and so are you." "That's wrong." The soaring dragon elder raised his soaring dragon sword and swung it down without even looking at little Anne, who was standing in front of Li Qingshan. "I didn't kill you because you're human." A man stood in front of Li Qingshan. No one knew when he had appeared, including the soaring dragon elder. It was as if he had been standing there since a long time ago, like an expert from ancient times to the future. Eternal and unchanging. His figure could only be considered tall, and he did not emit any terrifying aura. However, in Li Qingshan's eyes, his back was even more majestic than the ice-sword cliff beneath his feet. His skin was covered in a layer of navy blue. His sturdy physique didn't seem bulky at all. Instead, it was like the undulating peaks of a great mountain that had withstood thousands of years of wind and rain. Every part of it was natural and harmonious, condensing endless power. Then, Li Qingshan saw a pair of ox horns on his head, one of which was broken. He couldn't help but call out, "Brother Ox." The soaring dragon elder's eyes narrowed. Every part of his soul screamed out in warning. He had crossed countless battlefields and experienced countless dangers in his life, but none of them added up to the danger he was in right now. He wanted to roar out furiously, He wanted to swing his sword. He wanted to use all the abilities and techniques he had learnt in his life, to unleash all of his power and trump cards, but he just happened to be unable to move a single finger. All he could do was stare at the man with widened eyes and say with an off-key voice, "Who are you? How could such a terrifying figure become the backer of 2 lesser diamonds?" The divining elder had never mentioned this, and the divination did not show anything either. "It can't be. I won't die here." Oxen did not answer his question. Instead, he continued, "I'm killing you because I want to." He extended his right hand. With that, the soaring dragon elder vanished from this world. Yes, he had vanished. There were no signs, no powerful moves, no terrifying demon chi, and the first elder of the Sword Collection Palace, a golden core cultivator, who was renowned throughout the Green Province, had been killed in such a straightforward manner. "Brother Ox." Li Qingshan opened his mouth, but he had no idea what to say. He had considered Oxen to be very powerful, but he never expected him to be so terrifying. Oxen turned around and extended his hand before Li Qingshan. A jade ring lay there quietly. It was the soaring dragon elder's Sumeru ring. "I've turned you into this without your consent. You can treat this as my apology. I've left something in there for you." The value of a golden core cultivator's entire life's treasures was so great that it could even make the eyes of many disinterested cultivators green with greed. Even if a regular person sold everything they had, they would not be able to exchange it for a single item. "I know you have many questions, but believe me, the answers you've found yourself are far more valuable than what I can give you. It's just like how I can give you the power to sweep through this world, but I don't, because the power you can find is 100 times more powerful than what I can give you. Now, it's time for us to part." "What?" "My existence has already been discovered by a certain person in the heavens. You'll have to walk your own path in the future. These days might have been short, but they've been very pleasant. Remember, don't lower your head to anyone or anything. You've once ridden on my back." As he spoke, Oxen's figure gradually faded. His voice was like a great bell, shaking up mountains and thunder, shaking up Li Qingshan's soul. "Hold on." Li Qingshan extended his hand, but he only grabbed the ring. Oxen vanished from the world, as if he had never existed in the first place. It was as if all these years and days were just a dream. Only his final words constantly echoed in Li Qingshan's heart. "I'll wait for you above the heavens. I'll wait for the day when we stand shoulder to shoulder." The sky above Ice Sword Cliff was completely barren. There was not a single blade of grass, only ice and snow. The clouds hung low over his head, and the snow that had yet to form beautiful snowflakes fell. The wind whistled, as if it was crying. On the border between the Dragon Province and the Green Province, would people sometimes feel like they had nothing? Apart from an extremely distant, unreachable dream, there was only an ice-cold body in their arms, their tears frozen, and their souls numb from the bitter cold. The loneliness of the entire world surged into his heart. Something gently touched him. He looked back and saw little Anne. The 2 blood-red flames burned in the endless snow, wanting to give him some warmth, to tell him that he was not alone. Jiyu Yangying stepped out of the wind and snow and said in surprise, "What's happened?" She took out a purple talisman and forcefully broke through the soaring dragon elder's cage of heaven and earth, rushing to the cliff. However, just now, the soaring dragon elder's presence had completely vanished. It had vanished completely. Li Qingshan held Xuanyue's cold corpse in his arms. He did not reply, nor did he know how to reply. Jiyu Yangying even felt a sliver of fear. A golden core elder had mysteriously vanished just like that. This would probably shake up the entire Green Province. Could it be that person from the Shenyin sect? No, even if a nascent soul cultivator had the ability to kill a golden core cultivator, it was impossible for them to do it so silently. Even an ant knew how to struggle, let alone a golden core cultivator. Did it have something to do with him? Jiyu Yangying glanced at Li Qingshan and then shook her head. Li Qingshan was just too weak. If he had such a terrifying background, how could he still have such a level of cultivation? Demonic beasts that had yet to condense demon cores were only at the 4th or 5th layer among Qi practitioners. Even though she was far more intelligent than ordinary people, Her mind was still a mess. Tonight's events were really too strange. Leave her to me, Li Qingshan said. I promised to take her to the Dragon Province. Jiyu Yangying said, that's not a good place to go. You should return her to her master's side. Li Qingshan said, that's her final wish. Final wish? She's not dead yet. The corner of Jiyu Yangying's lips twitched. What? Li Qingshan was shocked. He checked Xuanyue's pulse in a hurry, but it was no longer beating. He looked at Jiyu Yangying in question. Jiyu Yangying waved the fan in her hand towards the sky, and a tornado rushed into the sky. The thick clouds that were originally extremely low above their heads were pierced through by the tornado. The silver-blue moonlight was like a waterfall, or a searchlight that fell from the sky. It shone on the ice-sword cliff and landed on Xianyu. The surroundings were still surrounded by the howling blizzard, but this small region was so quiet and peaceful. Her body glowed with silver-blue light. Gradually, it grew brighter and brighter. Her eyelashes seemed to tremble. Under Li Qingshan's shocked gaze, Xianyu slowly opened her eyes. Where is this? She blinked and looked around. This is the ice-sword cliff. Li Qingshan felt the body in his arms gradually regain warmth. He said in surprise, what's going on? Jiyu Yangying said, the 9 lives cat demon's innate trash ability. Xianyu said, the one with the surname Jiyu, you're the trash. Jiyu Yangying said, there's no way to resist in a dead state. Most people would cut open their stomachs and take out their demon cores. If it's not trash, then what is it? This time, it's all thanks to this guy. She didn't know how to address Li Qingshan. He might not want others to know his human name after becoming like this. Xianyu said, Blackie, you really brought me up here? Blackie. Jiyu Yangying's lips curled. Li Qingshan was silent for a while, then roared, scoundrel, why didn't you say so earlier, making him sad for so long? Xianyu said, meow, ha 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 ha, didn't I say it? I won't die. Li Qingshan heaved a heavy sigh. He didn't want to pay attention to her, but he was indescribably happy. At this moment, Xianyu noticed the 2 crystalline streaks of frozen tears on Li Qingshan's face. She felt like something tugged at the depths of her heart. She extended her hand and touched his cheek. Big Blacko, you're crying? Li Qingshan said, don't flatter yourself. It's just snow water. Xianyu moved closer to Li Qingshan's face. Hee, don't be shy. It's normal for pets to cry for their masters. Oh right, you promised to call me master. Hurry up and call me master. Chapter 102. Li Qingshan looked at his hand. It was a bottle of pills. Jiyu Yangying acted like she did not see it. With a wave of her hand, she kicked up a whirlwind, taking her and Xianyu along the path of the moonlight and flying into the horizon. Xianyu glanced back at Li Qingshan again before turning her head away. Her smile vanished, and tears flowed out of her eyes that were like lakes. Wait for me. I'll definitely go, Li Qingshan roared at the sky as loudly as he could. Xianyu suddenly looked back and said something loudly, but her voice was swallowed by the wind and snow. However, the shape of her lips could be vaguely seen. I'll wait for you. Jiyu Yangying was surprised as well. The clouds closed up beneath their feet. The final sliver of moonlight vanished from the ice-sword cliff. Li Qingshan maintained his posture of roaring at the sky. That roar was a promise to Oxen, to Xianyu, and more importantly, to himself. I'll definitely go beyond the 9 heavens. I'll definitely take you to the Dragon Province. I'll definitely find the answer. I'll definitely possess power. The waterfall flowed down, and Li Qingshan stood before the waterfall once again. The overbearing oxen was no longer beside him, nor was the girl bathing in the waterfall before him. He rubbed Little Anne's head. At least you're still by my side. Without Xuanyue's guidance, he followed the original path with his memory and returned here once again. Although he had the spirit turtle's aura concealment, who knew how many dangers he encountered along the way before finally returning to the waterfall. Winter had already passed, and spring had begun. It felt like a lifetime had passed. In the short 3 months, someone had told him that the Green Province spanned 15,000 kilometers. Someone had told him. My goal is to leave the Green Province. In the end, someone had told him. I'll wait for you beyond the 9 heavens. Li Qingshan lowered his head and smiled. He said to little Anne, let's see how far I can go. Afterwards, he leapt into the pool. In the water, the first thing Li Qingshan did was not cultivate. Instead, he summed up his experiences and lessons, weighing the pros and cons. It was very difficult for a small shrimp to have a good ending when it was involved in a battle between sharks. The minced meat that was exposed between the teeth of the sharks could greatly increase the strength of the small shrimp, but it would also cause it to die a violent death. He could survive. It was all thanks to the protection of Oxen, but this big sea monster had already left him, leaving him the target of such a huge sea monster. If he wanted to achieve this goal, he couldn't rely on luck to survive and take risks that he couldn't control. No one had an immortal halo, and even if they did, they would be easily crushed under absolute power. Not only did one have to possess the fortitude of an ox and the bravery of a tiger, but they also had to possess the depth and forbearance of a spirit turtle. He was not a coward who swallowed humiliation. Instead, it was to have lofty ambitions, to endure what others could not, to achieve what adults could not. The reason why Oxen didn't kill the Soaring Dragon Elder right from the start was that the Soaring Dragon Elder had been killed by the Soaring Dragon Elder. Perhaps it was to let him understand these principles. Anyone could talk about the big principles, but only after experiencing them would one truly understand and carve them in one's heart. If he hadn't heard the despair of the screams on the precipice, how would he have understood the value of strength and the meaning of friendship? He longed for even greater strength. There was no time in the mountains. The tender shoots turned into green leaves, and the flower buds bloomed with flowers. The water volume of the waterfall also became greater than in the winter, and the sound became even louder. Li Qingshan sat under the waterfall. All of these sounds, all of these changes, entered his ears, but they didn't affect his mind in the slightest. Between extreme stillness and extreme movement, he was no longer just cultivating, but also experiencing the sounds and changes of nature. Perhaps to him, these two things were the same thing in the first place. He ingested the spiritual herbs one by one, and they turned into surging spiritual energy. However, to him, this was not the only thing he needed. In absolute meditation, he could vaguely sense the existence of that incomparably vast spiritual energy in the world. It was everywhere, and it ruled over all the sounds and changes of the world. When he was like a spirit turtle hiding in the deep sea, forgetting his own existence, the spiritual energy no longer repelled him, and naturally merged into his body. Just like the Daoist scriptures said, strengthen the bones, weaken the will, empty the heart, strengthen the stomach. It was also like what Oxen had taught him at the beginning. Filling the stomach and strengthening the body was the foundation of everything. Only by being humble and having weak will, could one not be bothered by distracting thoughts, reach the true unity of heaven and man, and feel the existence of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. For humans, this was something that could only be easily achieved after the chi condensation stage had passed the first heavenly tribulation and reached the foundation establishment stage. Otherwise, it would require a great deal of luck and comprehension. But for diamonds, this was an innate instinct. In the eyes of humans, the birds and beasts in the wild were undoubtedly stupid. They only mated, hunted, and reproduced based on their instincts. However, they were a part of nature, and could naturally feel many things that humans couldn't, and spiritual energy was just one of them. While humans gained intelligence, they also lost the ability to be one with nature. They had to use all kinds of methods to cultivate in order to extend their lifespan. And the lifespan of any demon was much longer than that of a human with similar strength to them. Perhaps this was the fairness of nature. Oxen had once said that Li Qingshan could only be regarded as half a demon, because while his body had become that of a demon, his mind was still that of a human's, so he was unable to sense the spiritual energy of the world. There were countless techniques in the world, and who knew how many techniques that could turn people into monsters. However, they would only be monsters, not diamonds. If that were the case, there would be nothing special about Oxen's design. However, he seemed to have prepared everything for Li Qingshan a long time ago. As he practiced the spirit turtle's method of sea suppression, Li Qingshan could temporarily set aside his human intelligence and the distracting thoughts that came from this intelligence. He began to truly become a demon, viewing the world through the eyes of a demon and comprehending the world through the mind of a demon. After who knew how long, when the flowers began to wither, large amounts of spiritual energy gathered around Li Qingshan. Large amounts of spiritual energy gathered around Li Qingshan. The place Oxen had chosen was a place with dense spiritual energy in the first place. All of the pills had been consumed, and all of the demon qi in Li Qingshan's body surged like waves before being suppressed by the spirit turtle's method of qi suppression, constantly compressed and condensed. Little An, who played by himself to one side, suddenly raised his head and gazed at the waterfall. In the past few days, he had been waiting silently, playing with himself and never distancing himself. The spirit turtle's method of qi suppression, an invisible force flattened the turbulent water, turning it into a flawless mirror. The waterfall no longer created any splashes either. Li Qingshan had finally reached the first layer of the spirit turtle's method of qi suppression. At the same time, there was a great rumble in his soul, and his body grew larger once again, approaching 20 meters. The aura he gave off even made the waterfall shake. All of the demon qi in his body condensed into a pearl the size of a pinky. He had finally completed the most important step of becoming a demon, condensing a demon core. Li Qingshan lowered his head and gazed at the mirror-like water. He gently stroked the pair of ox horns on his head. The two words, North Moon, did not seem as obvious anymore, but they seemed to have merged with the grain of the horns. They were indelible. He thought of Shenyu again. He thought of the promise that he had yet to complete. He closed his eyes gently. Wait for me. I will definitely break you out of this cage and send you to the Dragon Province. Suddenly, he opened his mouth, and the demon core flew out. It revolved around him as if it was being drawn in by some invisible force. With a thought, the demon core shot out, immediately piercing several boulders in the water. It was basically indestructible, more terrifying than any hidden weapon. Diamonds did not know how to refine pills, so they were born with the ability to absorb spiritual energy. Diamonds did not know how to forge artifacts either, so their demon cores were their most powerful weapons. Although there was the danger of someone stealing the demon core after releasing it, that could only be achieved when there was an absolute difference in strength. As a result, this danger was not exactly dangerous, as even if they did not use the demon core, they would still be finished off and their demon core extracted. It was just like when human cultivators fought. If even the flying swords they released were easily captured by their opponents, there would be no need for them to continue fighting. Li Qingshan looked at the demon core hovering before him and thought, even if I say I'm a human now, no one will believe me. He observed it closely and discovered that the demon core was not perfectly round. Instead, it was pieced together from countless tiny hexagons. It seemed to be slightly different from regular demon cores, probably due to the effects of the spirit turtle's method of qi suppression. However, he had only seen a single demon core before, so he was uncertain. Li Qingshan extended his right hand, and transparent ripples of water gathered in his palm, condensing into a ball of water before changing into various shapes. In terms of the 5 elements, he was a water-type demon, possessing the power to control water. He casually tossed the ball of water aside and swallowed the demon core in a single gulp. He called out, "Spirit Turtle's profound shell." A turtle shell did not appear on his back. Instead, he propped up a spherical barrier of light. At a closer glance, the sphere was the same as the demon core, also composed of countless hexagons. The raging waterfall landed on the spirit turtle's profound shell, but not a single droplet of water landed on Li Qingshan. This was the innate ability he had comprehended after condensing the demon core, but that was not all. Li Qingshan stood up and sucked in a deep breath. He raised his head and let out a wild roar. Demon qi catalyzed sound waves, kicking up fierce gales that rushed into the sky. The waterfall was blown apart, and it even left behind a deep, fan-shaped mark on the rock face. The tiger demon's fierce roar seemed impressive, but it could only cause tremors. It was used to bully the weak. It was basically useless against opponents of the same level. Although the range of his roar had been reduced, it was still powerful enough to split rocks, causing actual damage. This was the second ability he had comprehended. He named it the Tiger Demon's Slaughter Roar. The Ox Demon tramples. Li Qingshan leapt into the pool and landed heavily on the bottom. The rocks that had been battered by the water for who knew how many years shattered loudly. A circular shockwave surged into the surroundings. Wherever it passed by, the rocks would shatter loudly. It was like thousands of tons of explosives had been detonated underwater. All of the water was thrown into the air, revealing the completely shattered bottom. The ox, tiger, and turtle. 3 creatures, 3 innate abilities. The moment Li Qingshan condensed the demon core, they all awakened at the same time. Chapter 103. Returning to the world, the pond water turned into a rainstorm and fell. Under the sunlight, it formed a rainbow. Li Qingshan's eyes were tightly shut and his expression was solemn. In his body, the demon core had retracted all of its aura and kept sinking. It was like a spirit turtle retracting into its shell and sinking into the deep-sea trench. After 1,000 years of hibernation, it was no longer noticed by anyone. Its existence had become a legend. When Li Qingshan opened his eyes again and leaped to the edge of the pond, he arrived in front of little and Li Qingshan had become the original Li Qingshan again. Perhaps it was not accurate to say that. Because the current him did not have any distinct muscles, nor did he have a sharp temperament. His brilliance was restrained. At first glance, he looked like an ordinary youth from a mountain village. There was nothing special about him. However, deep in his eyes, there was a calmness and depth like the deep sea. He looked at his human hands and suddenly remembered that he was already 16 years old. When he was a demon, his concept of time would become blurry. After returning to his human form, it suddenly became clear again. He had been in this world for 16 years. What he experienced in this half a year was more exciting than the previous 15.5 years combined. From human to demon, and from demon to human. All of the demon aura on his body had been completely restrained into the demon core. It did not leak out at all. Even other cultivators would not be able to tell that he was actually a demon. It was funny to say that after he comprehended the true path of the demon, he had regained everything of a human. There were billions of living creatures in the world. Why could humans not cultivate to become demons? It was said that when a cat cultivated to become a demon, it was called a cat demon. When a tiger cultivated to become a demon, it was called a tiger demon. What was the name of a human cultivated to become a demon? Transvestite? Li Qingshan felt a chill run down his spine. He decided not to think about this question anymore. He called out to Little Anne and said, "Sorry to keep you waiting. We can go now." Little Anne's eyes also lit up with joy. He snuggled up to Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan then took out the Sumeru ring that Oxen had left for him. He did not know what material it was made of, but it was crystal clear and did not emit any spiritual light. Now, all the true qi in his body had been transformed into demonic qi and restrained, so he could not open it at all. Although he was curious about what Oxen had left for him, he could only endure it for the time being and slowly think of a way. He tied the ring around his neck like a necklace and hid it in his clothes. He touched the charred locust wood tablet and said, "Let's go. Compared to those distant goals, I'll help you recover your human form first. But now, you have to hide again." Li Qingshan always remembered his responsibility towards this child. It was Little and who worked hard to help him at every critical moment. Even in the most dangerous of times, she did not abandon him. He wouldn't say any words of gratitude. He would just silently bury this feeling in the bottom of his heart. Moreover, the feelings and fetters between them had long since surpassed mere gratitude. He raised his head and looked at the rainbow. One figure after another appeared in his mind. Oxen, Little Anne, Jiyu Yangying, Shen Yu. Those expectations, those promises, those ambitions, he would fulfill them one by one. The mountain forest returned to its calm state once more. However, the deep pool no longer stirred up a whirlpool. It had been completely suppressed by Li Qingshan's demonic qi. This 16-year-old youth, who possessed both human and demonic qi, once again stepped into the human world, How many dangers would he be able to overcome and how many storms would he be able to quell? Li Qingshan brought little and to the ruins of the Black Wind stronghold. However, he could not help but frown. Since he was going to return to the human world, he naturally had to use gold and silver to pave the way. The silver notes he had on him had been destroyed in the battle at the mountain god temple and could no longer be used. He then thought of the wealth he had left behind in the Black Wind stronghold. Fortunately, he had foresight. Then, when he came to take a look, he discovered that there were traces of excavation everywhere. As expected, the secret room beneath Xiong Xiangwu's bedroom had been excavated as well. The items inside were obviously all clean. Li Qingshan sucked in a deep breath. What's this? A treasure-raiding officer? In Qingyang City, Yi Dachuan ravished a transfer order in joy. Haha, I've finally left this damned place. After destroying the Black Wind stronghold and adding the Dragon's Gate sect to the list of evil local organizations, he reported it to the Clear River Prefecture as a meritorious deed. After a series of investigations, it was delivered to the prefect's desk. The sacred church, even the prefect was rather surprised that Yi Dachuan could do something like that. Unable to withstand his beloved concubine's pillow talk, he finally approved a transfer order and transferred Yi Dachuan away from Qingyang City. Of course, returning to the noisy Clear River Prefecture was impossible, but he had been transferred to the most prosperous city in the surrounding several hundred kilometers, Jiaping City. How could Yi Dachuan not ravish with joy? The advisor said, "Congratulations, Master. Congratulations, Master." Yi Dachuan rejoiced for a while before saying gloomily, "I pity that brother Qingshan of mine. He was the kind of person who did not forget to dig a well." The advisor sighed. "My condolences, sir. This is all fate. No one can do anything about it." Yi Dachuan thought about it and emerged from the gloom very soon. "Don't forget to burn some paper money before you leave so that brother Qingshan can bribe the envoys of hell so that he can live a better life in the netherworld and join a good family in his next life." "Join what good family?" Li Qingshan leapt over the wall with a strange expression and landed in the courtyard. "Of course it's a ghost," Yi Dachuan answered casually. His voice gradually slowed down, and he made out the appearance of the newcomer. He finally cried out and hid behind the armchair in a flash. The advisor said, "Sir, calm down, calm down. It's broad daylight, so how can there be any ghosts? Sheriff Li has returned." Yi Dachuan glanced at Li Qingshan. All he saw was the blazing summer sun casting a long shadow beneath Li Qingshan's feet. Just now, he let out a sigh of relief and emerged from behind the armchair. He grabbed Li Qingshan's hand. "Brother Qingshan, you've finally returned. Where have you been all this time?" As he said that, his eyes welled up with tears. Li Qingshan pulled his hand back. "I was slightly injured, so I went into secluded cultivation in the mountains for a while. Do you think I'm dead?" Yi Dachuan said, "As long as you're alive, as long as you're alive." Afterwards, he told him the whole story. As it turned out, news of Feng Zhong leading a group of first-rate masters to surround and attack Li Qingshan had spread like wildfire. In the end, all of them vanished into the mountains together. In these few months, many people entered the mountains to search, but they could only find the mountain god temple that had been burnt to ashes. The remaining bones could not be distinguished at all, so rumors spread everywhere. Some said that after Feng Zhong obtained the spiritual ginseng, he killed everyone to silence them and then went into hiding. There were also people who said that it was another expert who killed all of them. But no matter which rumor it was, Li Qingshan was a dead man. No one thought that he could survive under such circumstances, so everyone thought that he was dead. However, they did not expect that in the end, Li Qingshan would actually walk out of the mountains, and he was the only one to do so. "It's good that you're back. You can come with me to Jiaping." "Look, what's this?" Yi Dachuan smugly slapped the transfer order, his fat face smiling so widely that it almost disappeared. He was happy from the bottom of his heart that Li Qingshan could return. Li Qingshan was his lucky general. When Li Qingshan saw the transfer order, he asked curiously, "Jiaping County's lieutenant? Doesn't that mean I've been demoted by half a rank?" Smaller cities did not have county lieutenants. Only larger ones would have them, with some even having 2 or 3. They were below the district magistrate, so they obviously could not compare to the authority that the district magistrate wielded. Yi Dachuan said, "That's something you don't know. Better to beg in a gold nest than to claim yourself king in a dog nest. What kind of profit is there in a crappy place like Qingyang City? Even if you make money, you won't even be able to find a decent brothel to drink in." As Li Qingshan listened to the district magistrate talk about eating, drinking, whoring, and gambling, he could not help but laugh. He felt a sense of realism from returning to the human world. Perhaps it was the 3 vulgarities, but weren't these the things that humans pursued? However, the 2 words Jiaping City made his heart skip a beat. He rubbed the Iron Wolf tablet in his bosom. The Scarlet Hawk commander, Old Wang, had once said that if he survived, he could report to Zhuozhibwa in Jiaping City and become a Hawkwolf guard. However, he had not considered this thoroughly yet, so he was unable to make a decision right now. Since he had killed Feng Zhong, he might have some colleagues or acquaintances in Jiaping City. Zhuozhibwa, who had sent Feng Zhong to Qingyang, might not have a good opinion of him either. The advisor really was an advisor after all. Although he did not know so much, he had still thought of this step. He reminded Yi Dachuan that arrogant Feng Zhong came from Jiaping City, and even now, we still don't know where he is. The reason for his disappearance was obviously because of Li Qingshan. He could not guarantee that the Hawkwolf Guard would not investigate this. Yi Dachuan's expression changed as well. "Yeah. Brother Qingshan, you have to be careful, or you better run. Just pretend none of us have seen you return." With his identity, he still did not know that Feng Zhong had already been dismissed by Wang Pushi. The disappearance of a Hawkwolf Guard was a matter of great importance. Li Qingshan said, "Thank you for your concern, sir, but there's no need to worry about this. I have something I'd like to ask you about." "What?" Li Qingshan said, "Who dug up the Black Wind stronghold?" It was impossible for such a great project to go unnoticed. No matter where he went, he could not go without money. Plucking hair from the bottom of a tiger came with a price. Yi Dachuan said, "I Iron Fist brought people." "Qingshan, don't be rash. There's nothing to be rash about. I just want my money back. Are they bold enough to refuse?" Li Qingshan was rather confused by Yi Dachuan's attitude. He had destroyed the Black Wind stronghold and the Dragon's Gate sect. Would Iron Fist still be bold enough to make things difficult for him? Yi Dachuan said, "A protector has come to Iron Fist recently. He seems to be investigating the whereabouts of that Bird Hall Lord." Liu Hong dug up those items to show his respect. "I heard he's an innate master as well, so he might not be easy to deal with." Li Qingshan said, "I'll be careful." With that, he vanished from the wall. He crossed over the many roofs and arrived in Iron Fist. However, he was in no hurry to show himself. Instead, he listened attentively. He withdrew his demon chi and assumed human form. Although his senses were not as sharp as a demon, they were still far superior to regular people. Within a range of 300 meters, he could even hear the sound of a mosquito. He immediately found Liu Hong's location. Chapter 104. A visit to collect debts. An old man in maroon robes with a goatee checked their pulses one by one. He would shake his head at times and nod at others. Sometimes, his eyes would shine, and sometimes, his hands would move up and down. To the left of the sacred hall was Liu Hong of the Iron Fist, while Li Long stood behind him, ready to pour him more tea at any time. A group of disciples of the Iron Fist stood in a human wall, blocking off many people of various ages and genders. They all seemed to be the relatives of these children. They all looked at their children nervously. If they received a nod from the old man, they would smile from ear to ear. If the old man shook his head, they would become dejected. This was an important figure from the prefectural city of Clear River that was thousands of kilometers away, a mighty protector of the Iron Fist. His martial arts had reached perfection. If they could gain his recognition, then their children would truly reach the heavens in a single step. Li Qingshan saw the old man with a single glance. The old man's aura was heavy, slightly more powerful than Feng Zhong's. He really was an innate master, but he was not a dangerous figure. If he demonified, he was confident he could kill the old man in a single strike. Even if he maintained his human form, it would not be too troublesome. All he needed was some effort. He was only curious about what he was doing. Liu Hong sat beside the old man. Although they were both old, even ignorant children could tell who was stronger or weaker. Liu Hong sighed inside. Recently, many impressive figures had come to Qingyang City. Ever since he came to Qingyang City to retire, it had already been many years since he last saw Protector Yang Song. Speaking of which, with his second-rate martial arts, he had only seen him a few times in the past. The last time he saw him was during the main branch leader's birthday banquet over a decade ago. Back then, he was still in his prime, and Protector Yang was like this. Now, he had already become an old man, but Protector Yang did not seem to have changed at all. Liu Hong said, "Protector Yang, rest up. Please have some tea." To his side, Li Long filled up the tea in a hurry. Although Hall Chief Wu had died, cancelling his plan to leave Qingyang City, he was happy instead. He never liked that Hall Chief Wu very much in the first place. He had been rude to his master, so he deserved to die. In the blink of an eye, Protector Yang had arrived. Not only was he more skilled in martial arts, but his bearing was much steadier too. He was arrogant, but he did not show it. He could even directly take him to the Clear River Prefecture. Yang Song stopped and leisurely took a sip of tea. "I'm old, my bones are not good enough." He let the children stand under the sun. Liu Hong said, "Zongduos Hu? Don't worry. You can be considered a senior in the sect. That surnamed Wu is useless, so how can he blame you? I will make things clear with the leader." Yang Song was in a good mood. Of course, it was because he had received a lot of benefits from Liu Hong. He did not care too much about silver, but one of the ancient paintings came from a famous artist. It could be said that it was hard to obtain even with 1,000 taels of gold. It was exactly what he wanted. Yang Song said, "Then thank you, Protector. What do you think of these children?" Yang Song said, "There are still a few good seedlings among these children. Although I don't know whether they can practice qi or not, they're good enough to practice martial arts at the very least. If this were Clear River City, the children with better talent would have been scavenged away a long time ago. Even a good seedling has to be fought over. How can they be picked so casually?" Liu Hong said, "It's all thanks to the wisdom of the leader." At this moment, Yang Song raised his head and saw a gap in the human wall formed by the Iron Fist disciples. A young man walked in, but he only glanced at him before ordering, "Let him out. He's too old." And he was far too ordinary. There was nothing worthy of his attention at all. However, the Iron Fist disciples did not stop the young man as he said. Instead, they parted in fear. Yang Song was rather confused. He saw Li Long and even Liu Hong widen their eyes. "Li Qingshan." The crowd broke into a discussion. "Isn't that Li Qingshan? The black tiger Li Qingshan? I heard he died. Why has he returned?" Li Qingshan could be regarded as famous in Qingyang City now. Li Qingshan walked over and waved his hand with a smile. "Sect Master Liu, long time no see. You must be some protector. It's an honor to meet you." Yang Song's eyebrows twitched. He remembered the other reason he had come. Was it not because of this young man? "The Holy Church," Liu Hong said awkwardly. "Why you've returned?" Li Qingshan cut straight to the point. "Yeah. I've come to be an unwelcome guest this time. Please return a few items to me, Sect Master Liu. If you want to exchange them for silver notes, I'd rather take less. After all, it wasn't easy for you to dig them out." Right now, Li Qingshan seemed very gentle. He did not have the slightest air of malice. Liu Hong looked at Yang Song. Yang Song sipped his tea and said indifferently, "You're Li Qingshan? You're still bold enough to return? I'll ask a question now, and you'll answer one question. If you don't answer one question, I'll slap you. How did Hall Chief Wu die? He did not even stand up." This was not a person worthy of him standing up. Moreover, Li Qingshan's disrespect made him rather annoyed. Li Qingshan was actually bold enough to ask him for something. And there were many signs that proved that Hall Chief Wu's death was closely related to this person. He obviously would not be polite to his enemy. Was Li Qingshan hiding his strength? Perhaps. But, even if Li Qingshan was a first-rate master, or even an innate master who had reached the Qi refining stage, so what? With his Qi refining stage 2 strength, how could he put a few people in his eyes? Li Qingshan was not unfamiliar with this kind of behavior. It was because he had absolute confidence in his own strength. He believed that he could control the situation and that everyone had to listen to his arrangements and be at his mercy. However, when Li Qingshan saw those figures who soared through the sky and saw Yang Song's current appearance, he found it extremely hilarious. He was like a toad croaking loudly, ordering around a swarm of flies, believing himself to be a king just because he pointed his finger at them. So, Li Qingshan laughed. At least I'm a frog, and a very strong one at that. The corner of Liu Hong's eye twitched. After not seeing him for a few months, this brat went out for a walk. He originally thought that he would restrain himself a little, but he did not expect that when he came back, he would still be like this. On the surface, he looked calm, but in his bones, he was extremely arrogant. Yang Song's expression turned cold. What are you laughing at? Li Qingshan said, when I see something funny, I will naturally laugh. Yang Song slowly stood up and said, try laughing again and try. Li Qingshan said, don't talk nonsense, I let you eat all my things, now spit them out for me. Without any warning, Yang Song crossed the distance of several feet in one step and arrived in front of Li Qingshan. He raised his hand and ruthlessly slapped down. He wanted to slap Li Qingshan so that he would never laugh again in this life. He wanted him to know that provoking the iron fist had a price to pay. Pa! A resounding slap. Yang Song tilted his head to the side, his old face rippling. His eyes were wide open, and one of his teeth flew out. His heart was full of disbelief. He clearly did not feel a trace of inner force or true qi from Li Qingshan, but his speed was so fast and fierce. Could it be that he was a body-refining expert? But he did not look like a body-refining expert at all. When Li Qingshan saw that Yang Song wanted to slap him, he did not feel much anger in his heart. Instead, he sighed. Yang Song's originally fast and fierce movements were now so slow in his eyes, so slow that he almost doubted whether his estimation was wrong or not. And because Yang Song underestimated his opponent, he revealed many flaws. Of course, Li Qingshan would not let him go. He slapped Yang Song's face, his smile unchanged. If you don't spit it out, I will hit you until you spit it out. Protector Yang. Liu Hong was dumbfounded. The inviolable Protector Yang was actually slapped in front of so many people. He was even more surprised that Li Qingshan had become so strong. This kind of growth speed was simply too frightening. The crowd also cried out in surprise. They were willing to bring their children here because Yang Song had revealed his true skills. He had destroyed a wooden pillar that was one zhong away with a single punch. In their eyes, it was simply the means of an immortal. Li Long could not help but rub his eyes. Was this really the cowherd boy from Snail Village? He felt that he did not know this fellow villager more and more. Yang Song was furious. He took a step back, adjusted his posture, and all the qi in his body surged into his fists. Pa! When Li Qingshan saw this posture, how could he give him a chance to attack? He took a step forward and slapped down again. Li Qingshan's strength was so great that Yang Song was dizzy from the slap. The qi that he had just gathered dispersed, but he was unwilling to give up and circulated it again, wanting to kill Li Qingshan. Pa! The third slap came down. Close combat with bare fists was like this. Once you were at a disadvantage, it was very difficult to get back. Pa! 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 The slap was extremely loud, shaking the entire martial arts field. Other than the slap, there was no other sound. Whenever Yang Song showed any signs of counterattacking, Li Qingshan would hit him without holding back. The reason why he chose to slap was not just to return a tooth for a tooth, but also because he did not have any killing intent, so he could not attack with great force. However, if he wanted to suppress Yang Song, hitting his head was the best choice. The slap was not fatal, and it could produce a concussive and dizzying effect, disrupting Yang Song's movements. It was truly the best method. Yang Song retreated step by step, and Li Qingshan advanced step by step. Clang. Yang Song sat back down on his armchair, protecting his head and face, and called out, "Stop hitting me." After taking a few slaps, he instead woke up from his rage, and it turned into fear. Li Qingshan could kill him, and the older people got, the more they cherished their lives. As expected, Li Qingshan stopped. "Hand over my things." Yang Song's face alternated between pale and red, and he roared, "Liu Hong, what are you still standing there for?" At the same time, he quietly reached into his bosom. He also had a talisman as a trump card. In front of so many people, he had lost so much face. If he did not take revenge, he was not a man. Li Qingshan said, "I advise you not to use it." Yang Song's hand trembled. Li Qingshan said, "You want to slap my face, so I will slap your face. You want to kill me, so I can only kill you." Li Qingshan's words were calm and steady, and he did not even stop Yang Song from taking the talisman. Yang Song pinched the corner of the talisman, and his expression changed even more. For a moment, he could not take it out. Chapter 105. Subduing through force. Li Qingshan smiled silently. He did not admit it, nor did he deny it. The sacred church. Yang Song said, "Black Wolf Guard Feng Zhong also died to your hands." Originally, he never would have believed something as ridiculous as that. A Black Wolf Guard, 5 first-rate masters, and a large group of second- and third-rate masters would all die to a nameless kid. However, he believed it a little now. Li Qingshan still did not answer. Yang Song drew his hand back. There were no talismans in his hand. Li Qingshan smiled. "Are we not going to fight anymore?" Yang Song said, "You're dead for sure. There's no need for me to waste things on a dead person." Li Qingshan said, "Oh? What do you mean?" Yang Song said, "Do you think you can still live after killing a Black Wolf Guard?" Li Qingshan did not deny it. "There's no need for you to worry about that. Please hand over my things." Yang Song paled. Liu Hong went up and pulled Li Qingshan to one side. He pleaded, "Qingshan, I didn't know you were still alive, which was why I dug those things out. If you want silver, I'll give it to you, all right?" Li Qingshan laid out his hands. "That's what I was thinking." He wanted to reason with them, but what could he do when they would always be unreasonable, insisting on talking with their fists? Liu Hong shot a glance at them, and the Iron Fist disciples dispersed everyone. The large stadium emptied out. At this moment, Yi Dachuan arrived in a palanquin. When he saw everyone's expressions and the red marks that had yet to fade from Yang Song's face, he already had a rough idea of what had happened. He felt great inside. A few days ago, they had organized a banquet for Yang Song, but this damn protector had been so condescending. Now he knew how powerful he was. He coughed pretentiously. "Protector Yang, do you have some sort of misunderstanding with Sheriff Li? As the saying goes, it's better to squash enmity than keep it alive. I'll play the host this afternoon and act as a peacemaker for the two of you." "The sacred church." Yang Song interrupted him. "There's no need. I have nothing to say to a dead person." Li Qingshan said, "Say that again. A defeated general actually dares to be so arrogant. Do you really think I don't dare to be ruthless?" Yang Song snorted coldly, but did not dare to speak again. As the saying goes, the situation is stronger than the person. Yi Dachuan asked curiously, "What dead person?" After understanding the whole story, he was indeed worried about Li Qingshan. Li Long whispered, "Qingshan, you should leave quickly." Yang Song coldly stared at him. Li Qingshan sneered in his heart. "Do you really think that I don't have long to live?" He said indifferently, "I just happen to be going to Jiaping City to join the Hawkwolf Guard." "What?" Everyone was shocked. "What a joke." "Kimpi." Yang Song sneered. He wanted to say, "You," but when he thought about how powerful Li Qingshan really was, he could only snort disdainfully. Yi Dachuan said, "What's going on?" Li Qingshan said, "Old Wang of the Red Eagle Commander wants me to report to Zhuozhibua at Jiaping City." Yang Song cried out, "How's that possible? You killed Feng Zhong, so you're a sworn enemy of the Hawkwolf Guard." Yi Dachuan said, "Is that true?" Li Qingshan took out the Black Wolf Waste tablet and waved it around. "Feng Zhong has already been expelled from the Hawkwolf Guard." You can basically say that I'm taking over his position. Maintaining a low profile was a lurking wild beast. It was for the sake of hunting down prey at a crucial moment, rather than allowing some clown to look down on him and look down on him. In the end, it would lead to a whole lot of trouble. That would not be maintaining a low profile, but foolishness. If you lowered yourself to the ground, you could not blame others for stepping on you. Displaying sufficient strength and might was the only way to reduce trouble. Liu Hong and Li Long exchanged glances. Neither of them said anything. Just what kind of luck was this? Half a year ago, Li Qingshan was still a country bumpkin, only able to contend with ruffians and scoundrels. Now, he could already join the Hawkwolf Guard that struck fear into the hearts of people of the Jianghu. He had basically risen through the heavens. Li Qingshan was at ease. Yang Song refused to believe it, but he had to believe it. After coming to Qingyang, he asked around and also learnt that the person who took away Li Qingshan in the restaurant that day was the Scarlet Wolf commander, Wasungzon. He took Feng Zhong and Li Qingshan to see Wang Pushi. He could not understand why the two of them would come to such a crappy place, but the outcome was very clear. In the end, Li Qingshan returned, but Feng Zhong died a violent death. The two of them did not help their own man, Feng Zhong. The meaning behind this was thought-provoking, but it was very clear now. Wang Pushi had actually expelled Feng Zhong on the spot, while Li Qingshan actually referred to Wang Pushi as Old Wang. Was he connected to Wang Pushi somehow? When he looked at Li Qingshan again, his gaze had already changed. Originally, he thought that even if the Hawkwolf Guard did not come looking for Li Qingshan, he would still find a way to protect him, but he could not help but give up on this thought now. In this world, only the Hawkwolf Guard would take revenge on others. Who would be bold enough to take revenge on the Hawkwolf Guard? The more he thought about it, the more he regretted being too rash. The other party was so young, yet he was already so powerful. Furthermore, he was able to escape from such a dangerous situation. Who knew what kind of person was standing behind him? How could he really treat him like an ordinary kid? Fantastic. Yi Dachuan was overjoyed. I was originally worried that you wouldn't be able to go to Jiaping. You can come with me now. Li Qingshan said, I'm still considering whether I should go or not. Yi Dachuan said, why wouldn't you? Joining the Hawkwolf Guard is great. You don't even have to pay to go to the brothels or gambling dens. Li Qingshan sweated slightly. So this was the benefit of joining the Hawkwolf Guard. If Old Wang were here, he might just smack you to death with a metal ruler. Yi Dachuan said, it's getting late. Let's go. Let's talk while we eat. Why would Liu Hong let Yi Dachuan make the arrangements? He had already made his disciples prepare everything. Yang Song's expression changed for a while before he actually sat down as well. He no longer said anything. I have nothing to say to a dead man. Afterwards, Yi Dachuan and Liu Hong mediated between the two. After a few cups, Yang Song used his tipsiness to find a way out of the situation. He clinked his cup with Li Qingshan and said awkwardly, El young hero Li. He could no longer pursue the matter regarding Hall Chief Wu. Even their main branch leader would scold him for offending a Hawkwolf Guard over a Hall Chief. Li Qingshan smiled. Protector Yang, just now, I've offended you. I'll punish myself with 3 cups to apologize to you. He downed all the alcohol in his cup before drinking 3 more. He had no reason, nor did he want to fall out with others. It would obviously be for the best if it could be resolved. There was a series of praises from the table, and Yang Song's complexion eased up a lot. Liu Hong said, we're all people of the Jianghu, so we're all hot-tempered. Bumping into each other is completely normal, but as the saying goes, it's better to squash enmity than to keep it alive. Isn't it better to make friends than to make enemies? I've lived for so long, and although my martial arts are nothing special, I've relied on this cultivation method to live out my remaining years in peace. Yi Dachuan said, yeah. That's the principle. They all secretly praised Li Qingshan's sense of propriety. He relied on his strength but did not intimidate the weak. His conduct was nothing like a 16-year-old teenager. The two of them were both experienced in battle, so they were first-rate at livening up the atmosphere. With Li Qingshan's attitude, they chimed in one after another, and the atmosphere became harmonious. Yang Song shamelessly asked about Li Qingshan's relationship with Wang Pushi, which was also something everyone was curious about. For a moment, none of them said anything, only looking at Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan did not want to assume the might of a tiger. So that old Wang is called Wang Pushi. I'm not familiar with him. Everyone was disappointed, but Yang Song refused to believe it. Wang Pushi doesn't know you, so why would he take such good care of you and expel Feng Zhong for you? Then he asked, the two of them are usually elusive in Qingyang City, so why have they come to Qingyang City? Li Qingshan had no intention of hiding anything either. He roughly explained the matter of Jiyu Yangying, but he hid the topic of the Dark Queen and the Cat Demon. The White Hawk Commander. The Body Brew. Yang Song gulped. To him, that was a figure of legend. Their power and authority were so great that he could not even imagine it. And the renowned Body Brew. Only their main branch leader was fortunate enough to drink a cup of it. The slight doubt he originally had was completely dispelled. He could completely imagine just how furious he would be if an insensible subordinate held him back when he wanted to curry up to the main branch leader. Qingshan, your future prospects are limitless now that you've caught the eye of Commander Jiyu. Just now, his resentment from being slapped in the face by Li Qingshan was immediately swept away. When he looked at Li Qingshan again, there was even a hint of respect in his gaze. He was like a petty bureaucrat who had heard that a certain colleague of his had been received by the leader of the country, and they had even conversed in a friendly manner. He could not help but feel deep veneration. What was the point of fussing over these small grievances? Perhaps. Li Qingshan discovered that from top to bottom, Iron Fist was very adaptable to the circumstances, but he felt rather mixed inside. The woman in snow-white clothes that seemed extraordinarily carefree had only invited him to a cup of alcohol, yet she had completely changed the opinion of an innate master. It also made him realize the difference between them. Yi Dachuan sucked in a deep breath. That's one of the 3 pillars of the Ruyi Commandery. He had spent many years in the prefectural city of Clear River. Although he was neither skilled in the arts nor in the martial arts, he was very familiar with the gossip and rumors on the streets. Li Qingshan asked in surprise, what are the 3 pillars of the Ruyi Commandery? Yang Song said, the Marquis of Ruyi, Jiang Fu, the White Hawk Commander, Jiyu Yangying, and the Great General, Han Angua. They belong to the schools of Moism, legalism, and the military respectively. Jiang Fu manages government affairs and commands the 9 prefectures. Jiyu Yangying manages the Hawkwolf Guard and is in charge of punishment and supervision. Han Angua commands the army of the Han family and is in charge of military authority. Every single one of them is a figure of great authority. They're commonly referred to as the 3 pillars of the Ruyi Commandery. I heard that among them, Commander Jiyu has the greatest background. Yi Dachuan said, even if we don't compare their backgrounds, the Hawkwolf Guard is responsible for supervising the officers of the army. This Commander Jiyu is the one that no one dares to provoke the least. Qingshan, if you can get a promotion from her, you'll immediately rise up. Li Qingshan silently memorized this information. As it turned out, the Hawkwolf Guard belonged to the school of legalism. Those who originated from the school of Confucianism and the school of the military were probably not the scholar Qiu Ba. How could someone who stood on par with Jiyu Yangying be a regular person? The waters of this world were basically unfathomable. But of course, most people would never have the opportunity to come into contact with any of the 3 in their entire lives. At the same time, he also felt that reconciling with Yang Song was the correct decision. Although having more friends did not necessarily mean having more paths, he definitely knew a lot of information that he did not know about since he came from the prefectural city of Clear River. This information was extremely important to him, even directly related to whether he wanted to go to Jiaping City or not. Chapter 106. The 10th layer of Qi practitioner Li Qingshan gained a better understanding of the structure of the government. This was basically a separation of 3 powers. Although it seemed very crude, that was because it was just too vast, so it was impossible to govern it in a meticulous manner. The Holy Church among them, the Hawkwolf Guard, was rather similar to the Ming dynasty's 2 ministries and 1 guard. They even possessed a little more authority. He could not help but say, "So the Hawkwolf Guard is actually so impressive." Yi Dachuan said, "Yeah, so don't hesitate. A great future awaits you." Yang Song said, "Eating, drinking, whoring, and gambling for free is a small matter. If you become a Hawkwolf Guard, you'll still lack that bit of money, Qingshan. You don't seem like someone who craves power either, but the Hawkwolf Guard has many spiritual artifacts, spiritual stones, pills, and cultivation methods. There probably isn't a single Qi practitioner who wouldn't be interested." Li Qingshan said, "Qi practitioners? Then what are innate masters?" Li Qingshan asked for guidance modestly, so Yang Song calmed down even more. He was willing to be a beacon of light. Moreover, this was only common knowledge. As it turned out, there were extremely few people in the world who could cultivate true Qi right from the start. They were so-called Qi practitioners. However, the requirement for talent to become a Qi practitioner was extremely high. Most people could not take this path. However, there was another path, which was to cultivate inner force. Inner force basically had no rigid requirements for talent. As long as they were not idiots and were willing to put in the effort, basically anyone could cultivate inner force. The inner force that regular cultivators practiced was equivalent to a simplified, weakened version of Qi methods. It lowered the requirement for talent, making it easier for them to grasp the basics. Basically anyone could practice it, but the inner force they produced was nowhere close to the effects of true Qi. That was because they had not truly opened up their meridians. Inner force would be bound by the meridians, unable to nourish the organs, much less leave the body. However, as long as they cultivated their inner force to the limit and made a breakthrough, they could convert it into true Qi and become a Qi practitioner, which was also commonly known as an innate master. The path of practicing Qi was divided into 10 layers in total. Moreover, it was not as crude as the division between first-rate and second-rate in Jianghu. Sometimes, it was very difficult to accurately say whether someone was a first-rate or a second-rate expert. This was because the martial arts they practiced were different, and the effects of their martial arts varied greatly. The paths they took were also very different. However, in the Tao of Qi refinement, no matter what kind of technique one cultivated, the goal was to clear the 8 extraordinary meridians, namely the Yang Heel Meridian, Yin Heel Meridian, Yang Linking Meridian, Yin Linking Meridian, Girdle Meridian, Chong Meridian, Ren Meridian, and Du Meridian. These 8 meridians were not directly connected to the lungs, nor did they coordinate with the inside and outside of the body. Therefore, they were called the extraordinary meridians. Each meridian connected the entire body, connecting several major acupoints. With each meridian connected, one's Zhenqi would grow a little stronger, and that would be a realm higher. Once the 8 extraordinary meridians were completely connected, one would reach the 9th layer of Qi refinement. If he wanted to reach the 10th layer, it would be even more difficult. He needed to completely connect the 12 standard meridians, which were the 3 yin meridians of the hand, the 3 yang meridians of the hand, the 3 yin meridians of the foot, and the 3 yang meridians of the foot. These 12 meridians intersected with one another, connecting the hands, feet, lungs, and the 5 elements. It was extremely easy for him to suffer from Qi deviation and damage his lungs. However, if he could overcome this, he would reach the great perfection of the 10th layer of Qi refinement and reach the peak of Qi practitioners. However, Li Qingshan had not even connected a single meridian, as he walked the path of the diamonds. There were no such things as meridians at all. There were all sorts of diamonds, and there were very few that were similar to humans. Could you ask a snake or a piece of bamboo to have the 8 extraordinary meridians? However, when he thought up to there, another thought appeared in his head. After suppressing the ox demon and tiger demon with the spirit turtle's method of Qi suppression, he was truly a human now. He had returned to his original state. Was it really impossible for him to practice Qi? As it seemed, he needed to find a method for practicing Qi and try it out. With this thought, he embarked on an even stranger and unique path. When he reached there, Yang Song even grumbled about how the status of people who practiced martial arts was just too low. This was because when he reached the innate realm and could practice Qi, he was already quite old. Although he had converted his profound inner force into true qi and opened his yang heel meridian, breaking through to the second layer, he was unable to take another step forward and open his yin heel meridian, breaking through to the third layer. Everyone comforted him. Yang Song said, "Practicing the body is powerful, but it's not the right path at the end of the day. Qingshan, you're so young, so you'll definitely be able to reach the third layer, or even the fourth or fifth layer. If you can open your girdle meridian and condense a sea of qi, reaching the sixth layer, you'll have the right to be promoted to a Scarlet Wolf Guard. You'll be able to hold a post in the prefectural city of Clear River." Yang Song's insight was sharp. He could tell that it was impossible for Li Qingshan's true qi to reach the second layer, yet he was able to defeat him so easily. That meant Li Qingshan had taken the path of practicing the body. From a certain perspective, the external martial arts of the Jianghu were simplified versions of practicing the body. However, practicing the body was the same as practicing the external martial arts of the Jianghu. It was powerful in the early stages, but it had no future. It was very difficult to reach higher realms of cultivation, so it was not valued. Li Qingshan said, "Thank you for your warning, Protector Yang. I will pay attention in the future." However, as a demon, it was impossible for him not to practice the body. However, with that, the situation before him became much clearer. He wondered what layer of qi practitioner he could rival as a demon. As a Black Hawk commander, Zhuo Zhibua of Jiaping City was roughly at the level of a low-level Scarlet Wolf Guard. He was roughly at the sixth layer and had condensed a sea of qi. Although he did not know whether a human who had condensed a sea of qi or a demon who had refined a demon core was more powerful, the difference should not be too great. At the very least, he would be able to escape. As a result, he made up his mind to pay a visit to Jiaping City. As the saying went, cultivation in the 6 doors of fans was good. The resources there were indeed tempting him. Li Qingshan then asked, "Protector Yang, do you have any methods for practicing qi?" Yang Song said awkwardly, "Methods for practicing qi are a secret among the sects and clans. They are not taught to outsiders." Li Qingshan also knew that his question was rather abrupt. He had just reconciled with someone, so asking for a method for practicing qi was rather inappropriate. He smiled and said, "My apologies for being abrupt." He drank a cup of wine and said no more. Yang Song thought about it for a while, troubled. "However, if you really want it, then I can only reluctantly accept it." Li Qingshan was overjoyed. He toasted Yang Song a few more times, while Yi Dachuan and Liu Hong congratulated him as well. Li Long revealed an extremely envious expression. He thought, sure enough, the strong are revered in this world. Li Qingshan had slapped this old man a few times, yet he had earned a method for practicing qi instead. After the meal, Yang Song passed on a method for practicing qi to Li Qingshan in a quiet room for practicing qi. The name of the method was the innate method of practicing qi. It was also split into 9 layers. However, practicing the 9th layer would only allow one to reach the 3rd layer of qi practitioner. It was obvious that it was not some impressive method. Yang Song told him about this openly. This innate method of practicing qi is only for laying down a foundation. With your talent, Qingshan, you will definitely be able to find a better method to practice in the future. Methods for practicing qi were very valuable. They could make many people shed blood for them. However, they were not exactly valuable. In particular, basically everyone knew about the innate method of practicing qi among qi practitioners. Those who did not know about it were mostly because they had come into contact with better and stronger methods for forging artifacts right from the start. The most valuable thing was not the method, but the person who practiced it. Basically, as long as you had the talent for practicing qi, there would be countless people in the world who would be willing to teach you this basic method for forging artifacts. As long as Li Qingshan joined the Hawkwolf Guard, he would obviously be able to obtain it. Yang Song could tell that Li Qingshan's future was limitless, so there was no harm in doing him a favor like this. "Thank you, Protector Yang." Li Qingshan's main objective was to see whether he could practice qi or not. The quality of this cultivation method was a trivial matter. Moreover, although the power and advancement of a basic cultivation method like this would not be particularly great, It probably had the characteristic of being easy to grasp, which instead suited him the most. He had some other guesses. Were all abilities and cultivation methods divided into 9 layers? All the abilities and cultivation methods he practiced right now were all standard 9 layers. He had asked little and before, and even the path of white bone and great beauty was the same. Yang Song bid farewell and left, continuing to choose disciples. He left Li Qingshan to cultivate in the quiet room. In the quiet room, incense that could calm the mind burned. Li Qingshan sat with his legs crossed and his eyes closed. He silently comprehended the wonders of the innate method of practicing qi. He had the experience of practicing qi in the past, and he had even managed to condense true qi to a relatively strong level. However, in the end, it was all for the sake of converting true qi into demon qi. Its final objective was to turn him into a demon. It was not a proper method of practicing qi at all. Only now did he truly come into contact with the cultivation methods of human qi practitioners. After comprehending it, he discovered that it was much simpler than the abilities that Oxen had taught him. In particular, the first 3 layers did not even touch on any meridians. They only taught him how to sense and gather true qi. It was just like how a secondary school student would learn from a primary school student's textbooks. It was extremely simple. In less than 2 hours, Li Qingshan condensed another strand of true qi, demonstrating his extraordinary talent once again. At the very least, he had the right to practice qi. If he had been born in the prefectural city of Clear River, he probably would have been accepted as a disciple a long time ago, embarking on the path of a qi practitioner. However, before he could celebrate, the strand of true qi in the demon core was sucked in and converted into demon qi. Li Qingshan could not help but become dumbfounded. Was he wrong? He thought about it again and began practicing the spirit turtle's method of qi suppression. His mind remained still as he absorbed the spiritual qi of the world. 6 whole hours passed, and the demon qi in the demon core had almost reached saturation. Of course, even if he cultivated for another 60 hours, it would be impossible for him to truly saturate the demon core with demon qi. Li Qingshan practiced the innate method of practicing qi again, and the true qi he had condensed was devoured by the demon core again, converted into demon qi. However, there was still some left for him. However, he ravished with joy inside. This proved that his guess and choice were correct. He really could practice qi like a regular person. The sky gradually darkened. Li Qingshan cultivated persistently, gathering true qi bit by bit with great difficulty. He was like laborers under the cruel exploitation of the capitalists, toiling arduously. Most of the fruits of their labor were taken away from them. Of course, this great capitalist was still Li Qingshan himself, so it was not exactly a waste. Chapter 107. Sumeru Ringliu Hong said, Qingshan is cultivating. Don't disturb him. Yang Song said, Xiaolong, you need to cultivate properly too. Although you don't have the talent to directly practice qi, as long as you break through to the innate realm, your inner force can be converted into true qi. It'll be very easy for you to break through to the second layer. You won't necessarily lose to others. After Li Qingshan finished off Hall Chief Wu, Liu Hong begged Yang Song to take Li Long to the headquarters of the Iron Fist in Clear River City. If that were not the case, Liu Hong would not have spent so much money to curry favor with Yang Song. Li Long said politely, yes, protector. The 3 of them gazed at the door of the room. They all had different thoughts. The rooster crowed, and the world turned white. Only after an entire night did Li Qingshan open his eyes. He silently sensed the true qi flowing through his body and felt delighted. He had finally completed the first layer of the innate method of practicing qi. However, this did not mean he could complete the cultivation method easily. The higher one progressed with any cultivation method, the more difficult it would be. The amount of time and effort required would increase exponentially as well. It was a pity that he had already eaten all the unknown pills Shen Yu had given him. Otherwise, he was confident he could complete the first 3 layers of the innate method of practicing qi with just a single one. He could even clear the yang heel meridian and break through to the second layer. The path of cultivation was still the same: wealth, companionship, method, and place. Wealth came first, but the wealth here was not gold or silver, but spiritual pills and immortal herbs. No matter what kind of ability or cultivation method he practiced, it was essentially a process of gathering spiritual qi. If he wanted to practice martial arts, he needed to have a full stomach. If he wanted to cultivate, he needed to eat the bait. External pills were indispensable. Although a person's talent and ability to comprehend were very important, it was impossible for his cultivation to increase drastically as soon as he comprehended it, unless he had already accumulated a lot beforehand. However, even if it was weak, it was still very important to him. He took out the cursive sword calligraphy and injected his true qi into it. Sure enough, the cursive sword calligraphy accepted his true qi. Although he couldn't even draw a single stroke in the end, it was still a great encouragement to him. This meant that the talismans on him could be activated and used. The biggest difference between humans and animals was how they made and used tools. Demons strengthened themselves, while humans relied on external objects. If one could not directly absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, one would have to concoct pills and medicines. If one did not have a strong body, one would have to craft spiritual artifacts and talismans. This was the strength of humans. Li Qingshan wanted to use this advantage as much as he could. Moreover, if he wanted to open the Soaring Dragon Elder's Sumeru ring, he needed this power. He meditated for a while to recover the true qi he had consumed. Zhong Xian took out the ring and wore it on his middle finger before infusing his zhenqi into it. Even though he knew that it was impossible for him to open it, he still had to give it a try. Li Qingshan's genuine qi flowed into the ring like water, circled around the ring, and flowed back into Li Qingshan's body. Of course, the ring didn't show any signs of opening, but what made him dumbfounded was that the innate qi he had painstakingly cultivated was reduced by more than half in the blink of an eye. It wasn't like the cursive sword calligraphy, which could be recovered after being used up. Instead, he had lost his cultivation. He had once again been forcefully kicked out of the first realm of the innate method of training of qi. However, the remaining true qi had become extremely pure, like a muddy river turning into a clear stream. Even though the quantity had decreased, the quality had greatly increased, and the speed at which it circulated had also increased. Moreover, the more impure one's true qi was, the harder it was to make breakthroughs. It was very easy to get stuck at a bottleneck. Many qi practitioners had to put in a lot of effort to make breakthroughs, like forging iron, slowly refining their true qi. However, this Sumeru ring had directly refined the impure iron into fine steel. He didn't need to spend any time or effort. It was a treasure that countless qi practitioners, and even cultivators of higher realms, dreamed of. Li Qingshan hadn't expected the Sumeru ring to have such a function other than storage. This could be considered a good thing. However, Li Qingshan smiled bitterly. Was it easy for him to painstakingly cultivate a bit of true qi? Not only did he have to be exploited by the Yarrow core, but he also had to go through the refinement of the ring. It was simply killing him. He felt as if he had gone through decades of hard work, only to be liberated overnight. Li Qingshan sighed heavily. He knew this was the correct choice. If he wasted a little more time now, he could save a lot of time in the future. Most people did not waste their time on cultivation. Instead, they were stuck at bottlenecks, unable to advance any further. Just like Protector Yang, who had reached the second level of qi cultivation long ago, but couldn't break through to the third level no matter what. He was stuck at this stage for so many years. Even though he wanted to refine true qi, he was completely powerless. The true qi that was transformed from inner force was simply too impure. Li Qingshan closed his eyes and began to cultivate again. This time, he didn't take off the ring. Yang Song had already chosen his disciples and was ready to set off. However, he waited until late at night and still didn't see Li Qingshan come out. He knocked on the door several times, but no one answered. Liu Hong said, "Could it be that something happened?" However, he thought to himself, did Protector Yang purposefully give me a problematic method of practicing qi to drive Li Qingshan into qi deviation? Yang Song frowned. He had no idea why either. If it were not for the fact that he could hear Li Qingshan's extremely slow and steady breathing in the training room, he would have suspected that Li Qingshan had died from qi deviation. Practicing qi was the same as doing other things. It was about a proper balance between work and rest. It was not just about wasting time. Otherwise, not only would it be pointless, but it would even be harmful. He did not remind Li Qingshan of this, as he could comprehend this during the process of cultivation. As time went on, the effects of practicing qi would worsen, and his mind would become more and more exhausted and anxious. Moreover, true qi was extracted from the body's origin, so it needed to be replenished through food and drink. Otherwise, it would be like water without a source, a tree without roots. Li Qingshan had indeed encountered this problem, but he switched to practicing the spirit turtle's method of sea suppression. The spirit turtle sank into the depths of the sea and slumbered for 1,000 years, but it constantly inhaled and exhaled the spiritual qi of the world. To Li Qingshan, meditating was not something that exhausted him. Instead, it was more like sleeping and resting. With a flash of inspiration, he began practicing the innate method of practicing qi again. In the beginning, it was extremely difficult. He would break out of his meditative state with the slightest carelessness, and his cultivation of the spirit turtle's method of sea suppression came to a halt. However, gradually, he grasped the trick, turning the spirit turtle's method of sea suppression into an instinct. It was like breathing constantly even when he was asleep. This was not because Li Qingshan was clever, but because the ability was just too profound. It had completely exceeded his imagination. Afterwards, he would practice the innate method of practicing qi in a dreamlike state. The two abilities that belonged to diamonds and humans circulated through his body at the same time. Li Qingshan discovered that under this state, the demon core was not as greedy for true qi as before. It could give him more of the fruits of his labor. Under this state, his cultivation speed of the innate method of practicing qi reached an unprecedented peak. With how powerful his body was, going without food or drink for a few days was nothing to him. For 3 whole days and nights, Li Qingshan did not sleep or rest. He did not eat or drink. He was completely submerged in cultivation. Finally, he opened his eyes again. He had forcefully returned the innate method of practicing qi to the first layer. He let out a long sigh. He felt incredibly hungry, so he took out the cursive sword calligraphy and poured his incomparably pure true qi into it. Before his true qi ran out, one of the strokes lit up, and a beam of sword qi shot out. Just now, it was like he had tossed wet logs into a furnace. It was very difficult for him to ignite the flames, but what he was using right now was high-grade charcoal. It was easily ignited, providing him with large amounts of heat. The 2 Iron Fist disciples standing guard outside the door suddenly felt a chill run down their spines. They looked at each other and said, "Don't you feel a little cold?" Li Qingshan put away the cursive sword calligraphy and took off his spatial ring, hanging it on his chest again. He then stood up and opened the door. The sunlight was blinding. "Young hero Li, you're finally out," one of the Iron Fist disciples said while the other hurried to pass on the message. Not long after, Yang Song and Liu Hong rushed over. Liu Hong said, "Qingshan, you're finally out? I thought something happened to you and wanted to break in a few times." Li Qingshan smiled and said, "I'm sorry, the technique that Protector Yang gave me is too profound. I was so engrossed in comprehending it that I lost track of time." Protector Yang said, "Are you really refining qi? What layer are you at?" Li Qingshan said, "I just reached the first layer." Yang Song said, "That's not slow. But it definitely wasn't fast." The first layer of the innate training of qi was the easiest. He had personally seen a talented child master the first layer in 4 hours. Of course, Li Qingshan couldn't be considered fast. But it was unheard of to use 3 days for the first time to refine qi. Li Qingshan said, "I've made everyone wait for a long time. Can we set off now?" Liu Hong took out a stack of banknotes and handed it to Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan was originally here to collect debts. Li Qingshan said, "Sect leader Liu, you're looking down on me. Protector Yang is so generous, I'm not a stingy person. Don't mention money again." He never wanted to owe anyone anything in his life. Only when he felt that he didn't owe anyone could he be at ease. Although the innate training of qi was not an impressive collection of abilities, it was extremely important to him. It would be better if he could obtain it as soon as possible. Liu Hong rejoiced inside. He obviously could not make Yang Song hand over the money he had given him. This was his retirement savings. Yang Song admired him as well. He did not take 10,000 taels of silver seriously as he chatted. If he were the young master of a wealthy clan, it would have been nothing, but a young man from the mountains like him was far too rare. This child was born with an extraordinary bearing. It was no wonder that people would appreciate him. Only after a few rounds of refusal did Li Qingshan accept the 2,000 taels of silver as his traveling expenses. When Li Qingshan arrived outside the Iron Fist School, he saw that the Iron Fist School that had always been quiet was currently filled with a cacophony of gongs, drums, and firecrackers. There were even groups of dragon and lion dancers, completely surrounding the Iron Fist School. Of course, it was not to send Li Qingshan off. For children with reddened eyes were delivered before Yang Song. They were the children that had been chosen. They had the opportunity to leave this tiny Qingyang city and enter an even vaster world, but at the same time, they would have to leave their homes and distance themselves from their families. Li Qingshan watched on from one side with his arms crossed. Suddenly, he heard someone call his name. Turning around, he saw village head Li and caretaker Liu in the crowd as well. Beside them were the two brothers, Li Hu and Li Bao, with a few villagers from the Crouching Ox village behind them. Chapter 108. Away from home. Li Qingshan said, "Have you come to see off Li Long?" Caretaker Liu said, "Why, we've also come to see you off. Qingshan, you've really grown up. Don't take what happened back then to heart." The current Li Qingshan had already become an unreachable figure in his eyes. He could not even speak properly. The other villagers all squeezed over to congratulate him. They all carried local produce and shoved it into Li Qingshan's hands. Li Qingshan looked at these familiar faces and sighed emotionally. He had no idea where to start. The Crouching Ox village that he had always wanted to leave since he was young suddenly appeared before him with great clarity. Every single house, every single blade of grass was vivid in his mind. The deep well that had trapped him for over a decade, the mud and moss that he had always wanted to leap out of, the mud and moss that he had grown tired of, all became familiar in that moment. Village head Li hugged Li Long and wept. The scene was noisy and chaotic, but when it reached Li Qingshan's ears, it suddenly fell silent. Li Qingshan even discovered elder brother Li and sister-in-law Li in the crowd. They were cowering, hiding from the nobles in the city. They looked at Li Qingshan, as if they wanted to go up, but they were also afraid. At that moment, they were filled with regret. If they had not fallen out with Li Erlang, who knew how much glory they would be able to bask in right now. When they saw Li Qingshan look at them, their eyes all erupted with the light of hope. However, Li Qingshan immediately looked away. What needed to be done had already been done. What was done could not be undone. It was not that they could not let it go, but they were already in a completely different world. Moreover, they had no idea that being his family was even more likely to die a violent death than being rich and powerful. With Yang Song's order, everyone moved to the sides. A large carriage with 2 horses was driven over. Every single horse was extremely spirited. Li Qingshan, Protector Yang, Li Long, and the 4 children boarded the carriage together. The carriage moved slowly until it stopped in front of the county government office. Yi Dachuan and the advisor happily boarded the carriage. With the protection of these experts, there wouldn't be any danger on the road. When Li Qingshan saw the item in Yi Dachuan's hands, his eyes lit up. Stone splitter bow. He had left the bow in the courtyard in Qingyang City. After he returned, he had gone to take a look. The courtyard had already been cleaned up, and a new resident had moved in. Obviously, he had no idea where the stone splitter bow had gone. He did not try to look for it either, so he never thought it would end up in Yi Dachuan's hands. He pulled the bowstring lightly with his index finger. With his current strength, it was not a problem for him to shoot 100 arrows consecutively. In a pavilion 5 kilometers away from the city, Li Qingshan once again met the owner of the stone splitter bow. Huang Binghu said, "Congratulations, Qingshan. Your strength has improved again." He found that he could no longer see through this young man's strength. However, he was well informed. The only person who could defeat a Xiantian master head-on was another Xiantian master. He really did what he said in the past, and it only took him a few months. Li Qingshan smiled. "Hunting chief, you haven't wasted your time." He could tell that Huang Binghu was already infinitely close to the level of first-rate masters right now. After drinking a few cups of farewell wine, he set off once again. Finally, he completely left Qingyang City behind, no longer in sight. Li Qingshan thought to himself, "Farewell, home." He had already understood that whether he would die in the dust or ascend to the heavens, he would never return. From today onwards, wherever he went would be his home. He traveled by day and rested at night. After traveling in the mountains for 3 days, his field of vision suddenly widened. A vast plain unfurled before Li Qingshan's eyes. The golden fields of wheat stretched as far as the eye could see, kicking up waves of wheat in the summer wind. Villages and towns dotted the landscape, with smoke rising from their chimneys. It was very different from the crouching ox village. Yang Song said, "We've left the range of Qingyang City now. In another 3 or 5 days, we'll arrive at the ferry crossing, and then we'll be able to change boats and travel directly to Jiaping City or even the Clear River Prefecture." Li Qingshan took out the map Jiyu Yangying had given him. With a thought, a speck of light lit up. The ferry crossing was only a few dozen kilometers away from here. Yang Song said in surprise, "A mental map, and a mental map of the Green Province at that. That's quite valuable. Qingshan, where did you get it from?" Generally speaking, the larger the area covered by a map, the rougher it would be, and the smaller the map, the more detailed it would be. However, a mental map was able to cover 10,000 li while also being extremely detailed. Although it was only a low-grade spiritual tool, it was still very precious, let alone a mental map that encompassed the entire Qing province. Li Qingshan suddenly said, "Protector Yang, Sir Yi, let's part ways here." Over the past few days, he had already gained a rough understanding of the Jianghu and this world from the two of them. At the very least, it was the information they knew, so he would no longer be clueless when he ventured out. Yi Dachuan said, "What? You're not coming with us?" Li Qingshan shook his head. "I plan on traveling alone. I'm really sorry for making you wait for me for 3 days." The reason why he chose to set off with them was probably due to some sort of fear. A person who had not left the village for over a decade suddenly had to go to the outside world, to a so-called big city. He would always feel slightly fearful, even relying on these two people who were not even as powerful as him, just so they could look out for each other along the way. Everyone desired to roam the world. They all desired freedom. However, when a vast world of freedom truly appeared before them, everyone would feel fear and at a loss for what to do. Li Qingshan was no different. But now, it was time to cast these emotions aside. When he left the overlapping mountains and looked at the vast plains, the dazzling golden wheat fields, the clear trickling river, and the faint handwriting on the map were reflected in front of his eyes. It was so beautiful and vivid, but his footprints had not even covered 1/10,000th of the map. The few of them looked at each other, not knowing how to persuade him. Suddenly, they heard Li Qingshan spread his arms and said to the vast plains, "I want to travel through the 5 lakes and 4 seas, the 9 provinces of the world. I want to taste all the delicacies in the world, drink all the fine wine in the world, cultivate the fiercest magical powers, fight the strongest enemies, sleep with the most beautiful women. The world, here I come, ha 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 ha." His voice went from low to high, his laughter like thunder. What he said was a somewhat silly declaration. Was it silly? Perhaps. The bull who heard him say these silly words was no longer here, but he also did not need to ask anyone, "Can my dream come true?" He did not need anyone else's answer. He did not need anyone else's approval. Of course, he did not care about what others thought of him either. The answer was already in his heart. After agreeing to meet again in Jiaping City, the people on the hillside watched as the tall figure left. They watched as he melted into the golden plains. He rolled around in the wheat fields like a big child, quickly disappearing without a trace. Originally, it was a rather childish and laughable act, but they all thought of a few phrases at the same time. A dragon swims through the ocean, a tiger enters the mountains. Li Qingshan did not follow the main road. Instead, he sprinted through the wilderness and arrived at a tiny dot on the map very soon. It was a city that was much more prosperous than Qingyang City. They did not waste any effort to remember its name. Instead, they directly rushed to the largest restaurant in the city, booking a table with the best scenery and ordering the best banquet. Every single dish was a specialty of the region. Not only had he not eaten many of them before, but he had never even heard of them before. Every single jar of alcohol was aged for 20 years. Although it was not as good as spiritual alcohol, it still had its own taste. The manager saw that he was a major customer and personally received him. After drinking a few cups with him, he suddenly smiled. Drinking alone is tasteless. Young master, would you like the company of a few beauties? He treated Li Qingshan as a wastrel who had managed to escape from his clan after so much difficulty. Li Qingshan was taken aback at first before smiling. I do. Why wouldn't I? I have plenty of money. He was like the most vulgar nouveau riche. He wanted to work hard on cultivation and venture beyond the 9 heavens, but he did not plan on becoming an ascetic monk. He had sworn to marry a woman like Jiyu Yangying, but before he actually swore to marry a woman, he did not plan on becoming an ascetic monk. Living in this world would never be a painful thing, or he would be better off dead. These distant dreams were planting seeds of hope in his heart, not torturing himself instead. As a result, over a dozen gorgeously dressed women in heavy makeup sat beside him and chatted with him with giggles. They constantly referred to him as Sir and Young Master. Some of them even extended their hands boldly into his bosom. At first, Li Qingshan felt rather uneasy as he was teased by a few women in the brothel, but he relaxed very soon. He hugged them without a care as he smiled from ear to ear. However, his gaze remained as clear as water the entire time, like a child playing an extremely novel game. However, it was easy for children to get bored. He did not really plan on doing anything. It was not that he disliked these women in the brothel, but after seeing Jiyu Yangying and Shen Yu, who were peerless beauties, it was easy for him to get tired of this kind of game. He did not understand in the past, but now he knew what it meant to look back and smile charms 100 women, and all the women in the 6 palaces are colorless. Bang! Suddenly, someone slammed open the door and shouted, "Lower your voice." It was a young master dressed in luxurious clothes, carrying a treasured sword, and wearing a crown on his head. He shouted at Li Qingshan. As the saying goes, 3 women make a play. It was inevitable that the table where they drank wine would be extremely noisy. Behind this young master stood a beautiful woman. She looked at Li Qingshan with disgust. Li Qingshan placed his index finger on his lips and made a long sh sound. Then, he yawned and stood up. He casually took out the banknotes on his body and placed them on the table. The group of brothel women immediately ignored him and fought over the banknotes. Li Qingshan walked to the side of the young master and sized him up. The young master placed his hand on the hilt of his sword. Although he was arrogant, he had the right to be arrogant. Li Qingshan could see that he was already a Khanate expert. No, he should be a talented Qi practitioner. The woman behind him was the same. The 2 Qi practitioners naturally had the right to be arrogant. In their eyes, Li Qingshan was just an ordinary hedonistic son of rich parents. It was not a big deal for them to kill him with a single sword strike. Chapter 109. A demon's visit. Li Qingshan said, "Please make way." Afterwards, he squeezed past the young master and gazed deeply at the scholar. He shook his head gently. She was a beauty. In his past life, he probably would not even be able to make a beauty smile even if he used everything he had. However, his target was much higher now. The sacred hall was a small joy for him to dream about. He walked past her and took in her fragrance. Dreams made people happy. The woman frowned even more. Perhaps it was because of Li Qingshan's rouge, or because of Li Qingshan's fearless gaze. Perhaps his final shake of the head had infuriated her the most. The young master was just about to draw his sword, but the woman shook her head and allowed Li Qingshan to go downstairs. Disdain filled her eyes. Li Qingshan did not leap up and fight back immediately like a cat whose tail had been stepped on, even though he definitely possessed the strength to do so. He discovered that as long as he could hold back for a moment, he could save himself a lot of trouble. Of course, he did not get angry. However, the person who avoided trouble now wanted to take the initiative to cause trouble for others. He made his way downstairs and shook off the rouge on him. He wanted to experience it. Now that he had experienced it, he did not care at all. He knocked the jar on his waist. "Little Anne, let's go kill a few bad people." The reason why he had chosen to part ways with Protector Yang and the others was not as simple as drinking with women. The jar thumped in response. Li Qingshan sniggered and strode away, making his way into the dark alleyway. Only when he entered the darkness did he feel the gaze behind him vanish completely. "Rongji, is there a problem?" The scholar called Rongji said. I saw that his steps were steady. He seemed to have practiced martial arts before. "It's just some external martial arts at most. If you hadn't stopped me, I definitely would have taught him a lesson. He's just a nobody. Even if we kill him, we'll just dirty our hands. Is there a need for that? Let's eat quickly and hurry up tomorrow so that we can get to Jiaping City as soon as possible." "Yes. It's rare for the Eagle Guard to recruit new guards. We absolutely can't miss this opportunity." The man's eyes burned with passion. As long as he joined the Hawkwolf Guard, he would be able to completely separate himself from the Jianghu and rise above all. No one could resist the temptation, so he was even more determined to obtain this position. "I'm afraid it won't be that simple. This time, all of the experts within 500 kilometers of Jiaping City will be attracted over. There will even be experts in the 3rd or 4th layer of qi refining appearing. However, the number of spots is limited, so there will be a lot of fighting. Don't worry. With those talismans as our trump cards, even if we encounter an expert, we can still turn defeat into victory." The man was full of confidence and quickly cast aside Li Qingshan. Yes, Li Qingshan was just a small fry. However, unbeknownst to them, their conversation reached Li Qingshan's ears clearly. His hearing had reached the level of diamonds a long time ago. As long as he paid attention, he could clearly hear the voices from 5 kilometers away. The Hawkwolf Guard had actually begun recruiting people. Perhaps it was even a spot left behind by Feng Zhong's death. Probably even Wang Pushi never imagined that he would be able to make it out alive and truly fill the spot. As for whether his appearance would disappoint these people, he obviously did not care. He did not have too much time to think about it right now either. That was because a few black figures had already blocked him in the alleyway. They gathered around him with ugly expressions. The small city was rather prosperous, but there were not a lot of outsiders, and there were even fewer people as high-profile as Li Qingshan. The news of a teenager in his teens carrying a large amount of money spread very quickly, yet he was actually bold enough to enter this world of darkness. If they did not rob him, it would be far too unjustifiable. Li Qingshan said softly, "You're pretty lucky." He knocked the jar. "Time to eat. Hand over the money." One of them drew a shiny dagger, but what he received in response was an even brighter blood flames of corpse incineration. There was basically no sound at all. The flames swallowed the people, and their flesh and blood turned into pure energy, merging with the flames. A lantern lit up the darkness, illuminating a wonton stall guarded by an old man. Although there was no business, only moths lingering around, it still managed to hold on with some difficulty. A young man strode over and called out, "Sir, please give me a bowl of wontons." "All right." The old man began to move quickly, and the wontons floated in the clear water very soon. "It's already so late, so why aren't you resting? At your age, it's time for you to enjoy your old age." Li Qingshan began to chat casually. The old man sighed and grumbled. It was all because his children were unfilial, and he and his wife had nothing to live for. These were the most common, miserable things in the world. Li Qingshan sat by the stall and ate the wontons as he comforted the old man with a smile. Sitting alone in a dark corner and eating the simplest food, facing an old man who had gone through many hardships, actually felt much better than drinking wine. It was quite strange. "Brother, you're not a local, so I'll give you a piece of advice. You better return to the inn after you finish eating. It's not peaceful here at night." Li Qingshan said, "Could it be that there are bad people here?" Then he heard more complaints and complaints. There was no lack of such things in any place. There were brothels who forced women into prostitution, unscrupulous merchants who gave usurious loans, and gangs who bullied the weak. Li Qingshan listened quietly and memorized everything. He casually inquired about the names and addresses of these people. After eating 4 or 5 bowls of wontons, Li Qingshan left all the money he had just obtained from the thieves and got up to leave. "This is too much." The old man was shocked. He raised his head, but there was no trace of Li Qingshan. A gust of night wind blew, and he thought of the stories of demons and ghosts that he had heard before. He decided to pack up his stall now. Tonight, there were demons and ghosts who came to his doorstep to help the weak and get rid of the evil. There was no such thing as evil magic in the world, only evil people. If he killed all the evil people in the world, it would be a great benevolence. Before the sun rose, Li Qingshan had already left the small town. In the wilderness, he practiced the ox demon's fist of great strength. Last night, he killed more than 10 people in a row. His chest was free and clear, and his fists were like beating drums, breaking through the air. Xiaoan refined the essence blood of over a dozen people on one side. The blood flames of corpse incineration surged around him, turning into various shapes, such as vicious beasts or venomous snakes. In the end, it actually formed a lotus pedestal, lifting him up. He soared through the wilderness, sometimes ascending and sometimes descending. He was impressive. Wherever he passed by, the lush grass would immediately wither and die, leaving behind a trail of death on the ground. If Little An wanted to kill a second-layer qi practitioner like Yang Song, it would be as easy as pie. Li Qingshan felt both admiration and admiration. Right now, his strength was only greater than Little An's, but he could not fly either. However, Little An was nowhere close to the level where he could recondense his flesh and blood. The path of white bone and great beauty was terrifyingly powerful, but it was difficult to practice. It required even more blood sacrifices. Although he did not purposefully collect wealth from the massacre last night, Li Qingshan's wealth still easily reached several tens of thousand taels. If those people were wolves that ate sheep, then he was a tiger that ate wolves. Suddenly, he discovered that to qi practitioners, the currency of the human world was no longer particularly meaningful, as they possessed strength that surpassed ordinary people. As a result, even through the most basic methods of plundering, they could easily obtain wealth that ordinary people would never be able to obtain in their entire lives. To qi practitioners, the true treasures were the pills and spiritual stones that could increase their cultivation. However, it was obvious that these resources were in the hands of powerful organizations. Ordinary people would probably never even hear about them in their entire lives. If he wanted to come into contact with these things, joining the Hawkwolf Guard was the best choice. He called Little An and set off once again. Regardless of day or night, he traveled whenever he wanted and stopped whenever he wanted. He destroyed 2 or 3 nests of bandits along the way. After 3 days, he finally arrived before a large river and stopped. This river was the Clear River, which was also the origin of the Clear River Prefecture. It stretched for several thousand kilometers, reaching all the way to Clear River City. The surface of the river spanned over 10 kilometers. Even with both of his lives combined, he had never seen a river like this before. As he gazed at the vast ripples, his mind immediately widened. Li Qingshan arrived in a large town by the river. It was called the town of Xiachuan, originally developed from the ferry crossing. Although it was only a town, it was even more bustling than Qingyang City. As he rode on a horse, he saw that the streets were packed with people, bustling with activity. Suddenly, a thought crossed his mind. If he killed all of these people, would he be able to refine Little An's flesh and blood immediately? Afterwards, he shook his head. Wouldn't that make him a homicidal maniac? There were countless boats on the banks of the river, and people came and went from the docks. It was extremely busy. There were obviously plenty of passenger boats heading south too. Li Qingshan actually saw a huge dragon boat that stood several stories tall. The boat was richly decorated, like a luxurious restaurant that floated on the water. He immediately dismissed the thought of hiring a small boat and boarded a huge dragon boat. The rooms on the highest floor of the dragon boat had the best scenery, as well as the most expensive. They actually cost several thousand taels of silver. Li Qingshan obviously did not lack silver. He took out a few silver notes, and the caretaker immediately smiled from ear to ear. She ordered a female servant to lead him to the room on the highest floor. Before she left, she even hinted to him in a rather ambiguous manner that he could call her if he needed anything. The room was extremely spacious. Even if it could hold several dozen people, it probably would not be crowded. The decor was even more luxurious than the best Inn Li Qingshan had stayed in along the way. He opened the window and overlooked the port and the town of Sichuan. He wondered when Yang Song and the others would arrive, but he saw two familiar people on the docks. They were the man and woman he had encountered in the restaurant 3 days ago. What? The rooms on the highest floor are already full. You want us to stay below? The man said in displeasure. The caretaker said in a troubled manner, there really is no other way. Young master, the second floor is very luxurious too, so please make do with it. How could people who could spend several thousand taels of silver on a boat lack money? Even if you gave them several tens of thousand taels of silver, they would not be willing to lose face. The woman said, we have never had the habit of making do in our lives. Caretaker, please think of another way. Money is not a problem. The man frowned and raised his head. He saw Li Qingshan. Chapter 110. Counterattack at night. Thus, the two of them appeared in front of Li Qingshan again. The man didn't waste any time and threw a stack of banknotes in front of Li Qingshan. Take the money and go downstairs. Li Qingshan slapped the banknote on the man's hand. You should ask someone else. The woman stopped the man who was about to lose his temper and introduced with a smile, I'm Qian Rongji, and this is my brother, Qian Rongming. The manager exclaimed and interrupted, could the two of you be from Ancient Wind City's Qian clan? Ancient Wind City was a rather large city, and he was a person who traveled all over the world on ships. How could he not have heard of large clans that could cultivate qi practitioners? Qian Rongming snorted arrogantly, while Qian Rongji nodded in a reserved manner. She continued to say to Li Qingshan, I'd advise you to accept it. When my elder brother loses his temper, he'll kill people. Since she was born in a big family, she had to pay attention to the appearance of a big family. She could not lose her elegance at any time. She preferred to subdue the enemy without fighting. Li Qingshan folded his arms and said, is that so? Then I'd like to see it for myself. This was the second time someone had bullied him, so his tolerance was limited. Qian Rongji's expression changed slightly. She came from a great clan, and she was born with the talent to train in qi. She was also very beautiful, and she had the reputation of being the #1 beauty in Ancient Wind City. She could be called a proud daughter of heaven. Ever since she was young, as long as she opened her mouth, there was nothing she couldn't do. Especially those stinky men, they were even more willing to work like cows and horses for her. There was never a time when they were rejected. Compared to the self-restraint on the surface, the arrogance in her bones was much stronger than that of her brother, Qian Rongming. She said coldly, it looks like you are refusing a toast only to drink a forfeit. I've always been fond of drinking. I'm willing to give it a try even if it's a toast or a forfeit. Li Qingshan looked at her face seriously, watching how a young lady's expression changed, as if he was watching some kind of magical performance. Qian Rongji took a deep breath and took a step back. She said calmly, you're just a Jianghu person who has practiced some hard body skills. How dare you act so arrogantly in front of a qi practitioner? Such an idiot was unnecessary in this world, so there was no harm in killing him. Qian Rongming laughed sinisterly as he walked forward. The manager sighed and was prepared to have someone collect the corpse. It was not wise to clash with the Qian clan directly. What Ancient Wind City's Qian clan? Is it that amazing? At this moment, a voice suddenly rang out. Everyone turned around and saw a man in his 30s walking out of the room. He wasn't tall and had a pair of slanted eyes on his tanned face. He looked at them with contempt. What are you? Qian Rongming furiously stepped forward, but he was pulled back by Qian Rongji. She looked over warily. May I ask who you are? What does that mean? Li Qingshan's heart skipped a beat. Another qi practitioner, and an expert at the 3rd level at that. No wonder he dared to look down on this pair of brother and sister who were only at the 2nd level. The dark-skinned man sneered, with just the two of you, you're nowhere close to becoming Hawkwolf guards. Why waste time going to Jiaping City? Hurry up and disembark and go home. Only then did Li Qingshan understand that this person was not standing up for him. He had come for the limited spots in the Hawkwolf Guard. He saw through the intentions of the siblings, which was why he had spoken up beforehand to deal a blow to his opponent. Qian Rongming and Qian Rongji glanced at one another. Although there was a slight difference in strength, they still stood a chance if they worked together. However, they would have to use up their precious talismans, and they would lose the opportunity to join the Hawkwolf Guard. Just you wait. After a moment of hesitation, they left behind a vicious threat before leaving in a hurry. However, they did not just say that to the skinny man. They even glared viciously at Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan said, "Thank you for helping me out. May I ask for your name, brother?" "Kid, don't think you can mess around just because you have some money. There are far too many people in this world that you can't afford to offend. I'd advise you to disembark immediately," the man said coldly before slamming the door shut. Li Qingshan shrugged. This was the treatment of the weak. The ship moved slowly, breaking through the waves on the gentle surface of the river and flowing downstream, heading towards Jiaping City. There were only a few rooms on the very top floor of the ship. The doors were all tightly shut. Only Li Qingshan paced around on the deck, admiring the open scenery on the two banks. It was too much for his eyes to take in, so he immediately cast aside the matter of just now. The ship sailed into the night. Li Qingshan was currently meditating and practicing in his room. He currently possessed 4 cultivation methods: the Ox Demon's Fist of Great Strength, the Tiger Demon's Fist of Bone Forging, the Spirit Turtle's method of Qi Suppression, and the innate method of practicing Qi. They all had 9 layers, and he was currently at the 1st layer. The former was a demon's ability, so the further he progressed, the more difficult it became to practice. The time it took to practice increased exponentially too. On the other hand, the innate method of practicing Qi progressed much faster because it was a human cultivation method of the lowest grade. In order to obtain the items in the Sumeru ring, Li Qingshan had devoted a lot of effort into it. With his powerful body, the rate at which he refined vitality into Qi was startling as well. After a few days, he was already close to the 2nd layer. Little and did not continue practicing. Instead, he crouched in a corner of the room, reading a book. There were 2 bookshelves in the room. They contained many leisure books like poems and songs, as well as a few common Buddhist scriptures. Little Anne was reading a Buddhist scripture. Although the eminent monk who had attained enlightenment had entered the demonic path, and the path of white bone and great beauty was also an ability of the demonic path, it had essentially evolved from the Buddhist Dharma, so he obviously had to pay attention and comprehend it. The blood-red flames in his eye sockets illuminated the words in the book. It was a rather strange sight. Suddenly, he raised his head. Li Qingshan opened his eyes as well and gazed at the door. They could both sense it. One was using his senses for living beings, while the other was using his 6 senses that were as powerful as those of diamonds. A figure silently climbed onto the highest floor of the dragon ship and arrived outside Li Qingshan's door. Killing intent filled his eyes. Qian Rongming was certain that he had not made a single sound or given off a sliver of his aura. Obviously, he was not worried about Li Qingshan. Instead, he was guarding against the Qi practitioner next door. Tonight, all he wanted to do was kill Li Qingshan. He thought viciously inside that he should have killed him the first time they met. As for the Qi practitioner next door, he had already made up his mind. He would definitely use his trump card to teach him a lesson during the competition with the Hawkwolf Guard, or it would not be too late to seek revenge after he became a Hawkwolf Guard. On the other side of Li Qingshan, the dark-skinned man's heart skipped a beat. He also sensed something, but he had no intentions of taking action. In his eyes, Li Qingshan was just an insignificant figure, and he had ignorantly stood up against a qi practitioner. He did not even listen to his advice. Even if he died, he deserved it. He was considering whether he could use this matter to his advantage and kill Qian Rongming while he was alone. The people of the Qian family of ancient Wind City should possess some good items on them. Afterwards, he would go below and kill Qian Rongji, which would increase his chances of success. The corner of his lips curled up slightly, and he stood up silently. The door opened slightly, and Qian Rongming entered with a flash. He gazed at Li Qingshan on the bed and raised his right hand. Circulating his true qi, he struck out with his palm. There was a thump, and Qian Rongming smiled in delight. "What are you smiling about?" Li Qingshan suddenly opened his eyes, and they shone with red light. Qian Rongming was shocked. His muscles tensed up, about to launch a series of attacks, but his body relaxed again. He stared at his chest in disbelief. The tip of a sword had pierced his heart. He struggled to believe that he had been ambushed. Even more terrifyingly, even now, he had not sensed the existence of anyone behind him. Unless that person did not breathe or their heart did not beat, they would not be breathing at all. Afterwards, he turned around with difficulty and saw the final scene of his life. A skeleton with burning pupils. The blood flames of corpse incineration spread through his entire body, turning him into a part of the flames. It was not because Qian Rongming was too weak or careless, but because Little An's current strength was at the 3rd or 4th layer at the very least. Under the absolute suppression of strength and a sneak attack, it would be strange if he did not kill him in a single strike. Li Qingshan sighed gently. "It was just a disagreement. Did you really have to reach the point of killing me? Are you too arrogant, or am I too low-key?" That day in the restaurant, Li Qingshan already had the strength to kill him, but he did not do so. It was not that he was afraid of trouble, but he did not want to kill indiscriminately. Those who killed because of a disagreement were just ordinary people. If Li Qingshan wanted to kill, he had to do it in a reasonable manner. However, others might not think so. Perhaps in their eyes, all living beings were like ants. Of course, they could step on them whenever they wanted. He casually checked the spoils of war, but he did not find the talismans or medicinal pills that he had imagined. Instead, he found a black brocade pouch. It looked a little familiar, but it was worn out and dull. Many of its legs were broken. It really did not match with a young master like Qian Rongming. Li Qingshan's heart moved. He poured the meager spiritual qi in his body into the brocade pouch. Suddenly, a mysterious space opened up in his consciousness. He seemed to see a virtual little box with all kinds of things inside. There was naturally no lack of silver notes, but there were also a few small bottles and a few talismans. With a thought, the things inside appeared in his hand. Li Qingshan was overjoyed. So this was the legendary 100 treasures pouch. In the past few days, he had asked Yang Song about a lot of qi practitioners' general knowledge. He knew that the Sumeru ring was something that only truly powerful cultivators could possess. The space inside was extremely vast. As for how vast it was, he had only heard of it, but had never seen it. It was rare for a normal qi practitioner to have 100 treasures pouch. The reason why he found this brocade pouch familiar was because he had seen it on Wang Pushi of the Red Eagle territory. However, Wang Pushi's 100 treasures pouch was much more beautiful than this one. Presumably, the storage space was also much larger. Without thinking too much, he knew that the one on Qian Rongming's body was a standard substandard item. It could not even store a longer weapon. However, even a substandard 100 treasures pouch was extremely rare. At the very least, Yang Song, a cultivator at the 2nd level of qi practitioner, did not have one. As expected of someone who came from a so-called family clan. He really had some talent. Li Qingshan checked the things in the 100 treasures pouch. Among the bottles, there was a bottle of healing medicine and 3 bottles of qi concentration pills. They were not the inferior pills that ordinary people of the Jianghu refined, but real spiritual pills. Of course, compared to the spiritual pills that Shen Yu had fed him, they were worlds apart. However, they were real pills for qi practitioners, and they were exactly what Li Qingshan needed the most right now. Chapter 111. Great River City. The three yellow spirit talismans of unknown effects were most likely the trump cards that Qian Rongming had mentioned. Li Qingshan had also learned from Yang Song that spirit talismans were also divided into grades. Although these three were also yellow spirit talismans, they were much brighter than the spirit talismans that Li Qingshan had on him. They were at least low grade or mid grade. His eyesight was still not good enough. Holy Church. The spirit talismans and spirit artifacts that ordinary people of the Jianghu could obtain with money were mostly inferior goods. They were made by novices who had just learned how to forge artifacts or create talismans. Even if ordinary people obtained true grade spirit talismans and spirit artifacts, they would find it difficult to use them. At the very least, if they bit the tip of their tongue and spit out blood, it would be very difficult to activate a low-grade spirit talisman. Finally, he no longer had to carry those miscellaneous items on him. Other than the Sumeru ring, which he could not put into it, Li Qingshan placed all of his possessions into the 100 treasures pouch. He checked his own belongings. Including the silver that Qian Rongming had brought, he had a total of 70 to 80,000 silver notes, several spirit talismans, 3 bottles of qi gathering pills, and other small items like healing pills. However, other than the Sumeru ring, the most precious thing on him was not these, but a demon core. He had taken it from the Rat General in Boundless Mountain. Of course, Shen Yu did not think much of it, and had left it for Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan did not know how to use it, and did not dare to eat anything, so he kept it in a small bottle. He took it out to admire it, and then placed it into the 100 treasures pouch. Finally, he put the 100 treasures pouch back into his robes. The feeling of having a great increase in his wealth was really quite good. Li Qingshan's murderous nature was aroused, and he wondered if he should go all out and find that Qian Rongji and cut the weeds by the roots. It had to be said that killing and robbing was addictive. Why did humans incessantly wage war? It was because stealing from others was always much faster than creating for oneself. However, he immediately suppressed this thought. It was not that he was soft-hearted, but that he was worried that if he did this, his murderous nature would be aroused, and he would kill the black-faced man next door as well, taking his things. He definitely had the strength to do so. He didn't even need to release his demonic power. As long as he joined hands with little Anne, he could do it. On the one hand, the other person had something you wanted, and on the other hand, you had the strength to take it without paying any price. How many people could suppress their greed and desire? Even with the suppression of the spirit turtle's method of sea suppression, his primitive instincts that were no different from those of diamonds urged him to do this. However, acting on instinct was not the path he wanted. While he was constantly obtaining great power, he was also constantly learning how to control this power so that he wouldn't lose himself. At the same time, he also realized something else. When a person had great power, they would become very terrifying. Qian Rongming probably thought this way. He killed Li Qingshan without paying any price. He could easily breathe a sigh of relief. It was as natural as eating and drinking. The dangers of the cultivation path of the human world were probably even greater than the boundless mountains. Li Qingshan dismissed these stray thoughts. If Qian Rongji did not come to provoke him, then so be it, but if she did, then he would kill her as well. There was no need for him to go through the trouble of looking for her right now. He picked up the bones on the ground with his clothes and made his way to the door, planning to toss them into the river and destroy all evidence. However, as soon as he opened the door, he saw the black-faced man next door staring at him in disbelief. He stared at the bones in his hand. What a coincidence! Li Qingshan was slightly surprised before greeting him with a smile. Afterwards, he made his way around the black-faced man and tossed the bundle into the pitch-black river. He was so relaxed that it was like he was not tossing a corpse, but admiring the night scenery. This was not because his mental fortitude far surpassed ordinary people. Instead, it was because of his fearless composure from his strength. The black-faced man stiffened all over. He clenched and unclenched his fists. His gaze towards Li Qingshan was no longer scornful. Instead, it was filled with caution and even a sliver of fear. He had been waiting in a dark corner outside the door the entire time, ready to launch a sneak attack when the opportunity presented itself. However, the person who emerged from the door was not Chen Rongming, but Li Qingshan, who he thought would definitely die. There was no need to ask who the gloomy, white bones belonged to. However, even if he launched a sneak attack, it would be very difficult for him to kill Li Qingshan in a single strike. That was not a chicken or duck, but a Qi practitioner that was 10 times more ferocious than a lion or tiger. He was very tempted to ask how Li Qingshan had done it, but when he saw Li Qingshan's smile, he was unable to say anything. Even more terrifyingly, he could not sense the existence of Qi on Li Qingshan right now. Just like how the unknown was the most terrifying. The sacred church. After successfully tossing the corpse away, Li Qingshan asked the black-faced man, "What's your name?" The black-faced man no longer showed any disdain. He said carefully, "Jia Fei." He felt like the current Li Qingshan was slightly different from how he was during the day. This teenager seemed to be hiding something terrifying on him. Of course, it might just be a false impression. Li Qingshan said, "Are you going to Jiaping City to join the Hawkwolf Guard as well?" "Yes." "What a coincidence." "Me too." Jia Fei tensed up, ready to deal with any attacks. However, Li Qingshan clearly had no such plans. He continued, "How many people will the Hawkwolf Guard be recruiting this time?" 3. "So few." Jia Fei fell silent. Originally, Li Qingshan wanted to ask for more information, but when he saw how cautious he was, he shrugged and returned to his room. Jia Fei suddenly asked, "May I ask for your name, sir?" Once he arrived in Jiaping City, this teenager might become a powerful opponent. Li Qingshan. He felt like he had heard this name somewhere before. Jia Fei thought about it, but he was unable to remember where he had heard it before. He returned to his room as well. Afterwards, he did not sleep for the entire night, remaining vigilant at all times. As soon as Li Qingshan returned to his room, he sensed something. He opened the window and gazed into the distance. All he saw was a figure leaping off the ship when it was relatively close to the shore. She landed on a sandbank and quickly vanished into the jungle. From the figure, he could tell it was Chen Rongji. Li Qingshan could not help but sigh. This woman really was quite decisive and cunning. She must have realized something was amiss when Chen Rongming did not return. She did not investigate or question him, directly leaping off the ship and fleeing. Shaking his head and casting this matter aside, Li Qingshan took out a bottle of qi gathering pills. He opened it and took a look. There were only 3 in there, and each one was the size of a longan. He took one out and ingested it, beginning to cultivate. As expected, with the assistance of the external pill, his cultivation speed increased slightly. The medicinal effects replenished his true qi, and true qi circulated through his body. As he inhaled and exhaled, time flew. Very soon, a qi-gathering pill was refined in his body. Li Qingshan took out another qi-gathering pill and ingested it. If other practitioners had seen this, they would have been dumbfounded. Who would eat elixirs like jelly beans? Although external elixirs could greatly increase the speed of cultivation, it did not mean that a person could easily become an expert with elixirs and miraculous elixirs. Talent, hard work, a teacher, and even luck were all indispensable. Furthermore, there was a limit to how many medicinal pills one could take. It was not as simple as eating as much as one could and then converting it all into power. Otherwise, alchemists would all be unparalleled experts. For example, Chen Rongming's 9 qi gathering pills were originally used for 3 months. One pill was taken every 10 days to slowly refine the medicinal effects. This was when the family valued it more. The normal speed was to take 1 pill every half a month to ensure that the medicinal effects were not wasted. Who would eat it like Li Qingshan? This was because the medicinal power of a mere qi condensation pill could not possibly remain in his body for more than 10 days. He had to seize every second to convert it into true qi, lest it be plundered by the demonic core and converted into demonic qi. Not a single bit of it would go to waste. Of course, Li Qingshan did not know this. He was still happily thinking that it was indeed faster to take medicinal pills and cultivate. When he ate the 7th qi gathering pill, he had successfully cultivated the innate training of qi to the 2nd tier. Because of the Sumeru rings purifying true qi, he did not feel any bottlenecks at all. He stood up. He could feel the extremely pure true qi coursing through his body. His entire body seemed to be much lighter. He put away the remaining 2 qi-gathering pills. With his keen hearing, he heard a commotion coming from afar. The ship was also bustling with noise. He could faintly hear many people saying, "We've arrived at Jiaping City." Li Qingshan went outside in a hurry to take a look. He saw that the deck below was already filled with people, while the river was blocked by a large mountain and made a turn. After making it around the bend, a majestic city sat between the mountains and rivers, unfolding before Li Qingshan's eyes. More accurately speaking, it could not be called a city, as there were no city walls here. It was closer to a modern city. This was the place where 2 large rivers met. The Yi River flowed into the Qing River here, and the city of Jiaping was spread out on both sides of the river. Rows upon rows of residences, buildings, pagodas, temples, and Daoist monasteries stretched out endlessly in all directions. Further out were boundless golden fields, and large flocks of birds flew freely under the blue sky above the city. Li Qingshan had never seen an ancient city before, but he believed that the city before him was even more expansive and prosperous than the famous bustling places of ancient times like Hangzhou and Yangzhou. The absence of city walls proved the absolute confidence of the ruler. He did not rely on a piece of earth to protect himself. Only a small city like Qingyang had city walls to stop the attacks of bandits and bandits. Truly large cities did not have city walls. This was a city ruled by qi practitioners. If there really was an enemy that could pose a threat to the city, it would not be something that could be stopped by a stone wall. Instead, it would affect the development of the city. Li Qingshan finally understood why Yi Dachuan would be so overjoyed when he learned he could become a district magistrate here. Even being a minor official here was far better than being in Qingyang City. Just how prosperous would the prefectural city that ruled over the entire Clear River Prefecture be? He was unable to imagine what the commandery city of Ruyi would be like. Everything before him made him understand that this was not a simple ancient world. The existence of qi practitioners deeply influenced everything in this world, making it seem like a legend, shrouded in a wondrous luster. Chapter 112. First time at the Hawkwolf Guard. On a mountain peak to the north of the city, an iron hawk forged from black iron unfurled its wings that spanned over 30 meters. It stood on a stone platform that stood several meters tall, overlooking the entire Jiaping city. It had no intentions of hiding at all, as if it was announcing arrogantly that the Hawkwolf Guard was responsible for monitoring and protecting the city. Whether you were a person of the Jianghu or a qi practitioner, you all had to be careful under the gaze of the hawk. Li Qingshan disembarked from the ship and said nothing more. He directly made his way towards the mountain peak. Below the Iron Hawk was a cluster of buildings, which was where the Hawkwolf Guard resided. After he left, Jia Fei disembarked just now and followed behind him. His gaze had already become determined once more. No matter how Li Qingshan hid his strength, it was unable to sway his determination to join the Hawkwolf Guard. Li Qingshan followed the neatly arranged stone steps. The 2 sides of the trees were lush, almost obscuring the sky above. The mountain peak was not particularly tall, only several hundred meters tall. It could not compare to the great mountains of the Boundless Mountains, but when he looked back at Jiaping City at the foot of the mountain, he felt a different sense of spaciousness. At the end of the stone steps was a large, stone gateway. On it were the 3 bold words, Hawkwolf Guard. Past the gateway was a spacious square. At the center was the huge iron hawk. He did not notice it from afar, but only when he got closer did he feel the might of the iron hawk. In particular, the hawk's eyes basically seemed to be staring at people, like they were alive. The stone platform beneath his feet was engraved with the same bold words, Hawk eyes the world, Wolf watches the 9 provinces. There was obviously no need for further explanation for Hawk eyes the world. It was like a hawk soaring in the sky, gazing down at the land. As for Wolf Watch, it described a certain posture. If regular people were called by their name from behind, they would definitely turn around and look back. They would only turn their heads and not their bodies, which was the posture of Wolf Watch. Those who possessed this posture were often crafty and suspicious. Not only were these words filled with heroism, but they also perfectly described the duties of the Hawkwolf Guard. Although Li Qingshan did not know calligraphy, he could immediately tell that these words originated from the same person as the 3 words, Hawkwolf Guard. They possessed an irreplicable, domineering aura that swallowed up the surroundings and swept through everything. It was even more shocking than the huge iron hawk statue. Before Li Qingshan could take a closer look, a young man in green walked over. "You've also come to enlist in the Hawkwolf Guard, right?" Li Qingshan did not sense any sign of kung fu or qi training from him. Presumably, he was just a waiter or a receptionist. However, he naturally had an aura of command. As expected of a 7th-ranked official in front of the Prime Minister's door. "Exactly," Li Qingshan said. The green-clothed attendant looked at Li Qingshan in puzzlement. Seeing Li Qingshan's calm expression, he said indifferently, "Follow me." He led Li Qingshan to a large hall. "Go in. Everyone's inside. When you go in, record your name and cultivation first." As soon as Li Qingshan stepped into the hall, many gazes immediately landed on him. Every single gaze was as sharp as a blade. Li Qingshan saw over 20 people standing in the hall. There were men and women, young and old. Some stood in groups of 3 or 5, while others meditated alone. Every single one of them was a qi practitioner. They looked at Li Qingshan, and most of their gazes were hostile. Some raised their eyebrows and mocked him, discussing happily with their companions, while some showed disdain and immediately looked away. There were also 1 or 2 people who were rather doubtful. This was the first time Li Qingshan had seen so many qi practitioners. He felt rather indescribably excited. He had finally come into contact with the cultivators of this world. Although Xian Yu had actually already brought him into contact with them viciously, all of these people were as powerful as monsters. All he felt was admiration and despair. The difference was too great, so it did not feel real at all. Only when he looked at these people now did he truly see them as equals, or even look down on them. Li Qingshan saw several dozen wooden plaques hanging on the walls of the hall, with names written on them. After a glance, he arrived before a long table in the corner of the hall. An envoy in black leaned against the table and wrote on it. He said without even raising his head, "Name, origins, master, cultivation. Remember, you can't hide anything, or they'll find out." The envoy did not continue, but the threat was self-explanatory. Only then did Li Qingshan understand why these people had remained here. They wanted to learn more about their new opponents. Originally, Li Qingshan wanted to take out his Black Wolf tablet and see the Black Hawk commander, Zhuozhibua, so that he could directly join the Hawkwolf Guard. However, he just happened to not see a single proper Hawkwolf Guard. There were only a few envoys in black attending to him, so he gave up on that thought for now. He just happened to want to observe properly. He would see the person in question sooner or later anyway. He refused to believe that Zhuozhibua would remain hidden for such a major event. Li Qingshan, first layer qi practitioner. Li Qingshan said. As soon as Li Qingshan mentioned his cultivation, he heard a few snickers. Applying for the Hawkwolf Guard as a first layer qi practitioner? This kid's lost his mind. Go home and drink milk. This isn't where you should be. Is he really a first layer qi practitioner? I don't think so. Don't tell me he's lying. You're not far from death if you falsely report your cultivation. The people in the hall were all second-layer qi practitioners at the very least. If they possessed innate talent as a qi practitioner, most of them would cultivate diligently and only emerge after breaking through to the second layer. If they practiced inner force and reached the innate realm, they would use the true qi behind them converted from inner force to forcefully break through to the second layer. As a result, there were very few first-layer qi practitioners who roamed the world. Even the green-robed emissary who was recording also raised his head. Really? Those who aren't qi practitioners can't sign up. Although he was not a qi practitioner, he had spent most of his time in the Hawkwolf Guard, so his insight was quite good. He could tell that Li Qingshan did not seem like a qi practitioner at all. Li Qingshan suddenly understood one of his flaws. After experiencing the dangers of the boundless mountains, He had used the spirit turtle's method of Qi suppression to conceal all of his aura. It had basically become an instinctive action. Even after refining true Qi, it was still the same. Obviously, he had to firmly suppress his demon Qi. He could not allow even a sliver of it to leak out, but there was no need for him to be so cautious with true Qi. If he revealed his identity as a Qi practitioner at a suitable time, it should save him quite a lot of trouble. As a result, his aura changed. His true Qi was no longer suppressed, so it was naturally released, displaying the strength of a first-layer Qi practitioner. However, it only led to a roar of laughter. Even the doubtful gazes finally looked away, no longer taking Li Qingshan seriously. The unknown was terrifying, which was why a donkey could scare away a tiger. However, when a donkey used up all 3 of its moves, that was when it would be at its wit's end. The envoy put down his brush and smiled as well. I can tell you're young, so it's not easy for you to possess such talent. Why don't you go home and cultivate for a few more years? You can only go out after you break through to the 2nd layer. The competition this time will be dangerous. Li Qingshan ignored the mockery. He expressed his gratitude towards the kind reminder before saying confidently, "I'm confident." The envoy did not comment on that. He continued to record. No clan, no sect, no master. This was Li Qingshan's background. Before long, the envoy finished recording and raised his head. The competition will begin in 3 days. You can leave. Someone will arrange a place for you to stay. You can stay here if you want. Another attendant picked up a wooden sign and hung it at the end of the high wall, hanging it together with the names of the others. Of course, there wasn't any complicated information on it. There was only the name on the front and the cultivation level on the back. This made Li Qingshan sigh. To a Qi practitioner, background and master were all fake. Strength was the only calling card, something that people valued. When he turned around, he looked at the crowd of Qi practitioners as if he was looking at trash. He shook his head and especially said to those who were laughing at him loudly, "Trash." Arrogance was his nature, and ridiculing others was his talent. "Who are you talking about?" a Qi practitioner said angrily. He was the one who told Li Qingshan to go home and drink milk. "I'll talk to whoever answers," Li Qingshan said. Those who did not speak ill of Li Qingshan naturally did not think that Li Qingshan was scolding them. The Qi practitioner flashed in front of Li Qingshan and suddenly raised his hand, gathering his true Qi. The envoy who was recording said, "Private fights on the mountain. Kill without mercy." The Qi practitioner's hand trembled a little, but he still lowered it in the end. The rules of the Hawkwolf Guard were no joke. In the very beginning, when the Hawkwolf Guard recruited new people, they did not care about food or lodging. All they had to do was come on the day of the competition. Afterwards, many people were unable to come. The Qi practitioners lived in Jiaping City. In order to eliminate their opponents, they would basically stop at nothing. Poisoning, ambushing, and assassinating would often end before they even began. As a result, the rules were changed. All the people who came to be recruited would stay on the mountain, and they were forbidden from attacking one another in any way. If they did, they would be killed without mercy. Li Qingshan said, "Come bite me, you idiot." How did the saying go? Your brother's low profile doesn't give you the right to show off. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. That was his principle in life. You can curse, but I'm not stupid either. The Qi practitioner laughed out of anger. In 3 days, you'll understand what it means to be reckless. A few other Qi practitioners sneered as well. At this moment, Jia Fei walked into the hall. He glanced at Li Qingshan before looking at the wall. He let out a sigh of relief. As it seemed, Li Qingshan's cultivation was indeed at the 1st layer. He had just used some sort of method to hide his cultivation, which gave him quite a fright. However, the method Li Qingshan had used to kill Qian Rongming remained a mystery to him. He dared not be careless. When the other people in the hall saw Jiao Fei, they immediately stopped paying attention to Li Qingshan. A 3rd-layer Qi practitioner would be a powerful opponent in the competition this time. They needed to observe him properly. Compared to him, Li Qingshan was just a clown. He was close to death, so there was no need to pay attention to him. Li Qingshan didn't stay in the hall any longer. As soon as he exited the hall, another attendant led him up the mountain. He walked past the lush greenery and fragrant flowers. With the care of a master gardener, the scenery changed every 3 steps. It was too beautiful to behold. When they arrived at a house, the green-robed messenger pointed at a room and said, "This is your residence. You already know that no private fights are allowed on the mountain. You can eat 3 meals a day in the hall. If you need anything, you can call us. As long as it's not too much, we'll try our best to satisfy you." Although their attitude was very ordinary, their service was absolutely thorough. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories,